my Free Speech TV swag. It is the Free Speech TV freespeech.org hat, which, by the way, has the URL on it. So you're promoting Free Speech TV. I have my Free Speech TV notebook and pen right here. And it's really, this is a nice premium one, you know, with one of these little bands that holds, you know, you can see which page you're on and holds it there. And the Colsey, I forget what they're, Cool-C is what they're called. You know, keep your cup cool. It says diversity on it, and it's got all these rainbow colors. And of course, my Free Speech TV mug, all kinds of goodies. And the reason I mention these things is because we're still behind. It's a little worrying. There are 2 days left. And I have to tell you, I was one of the people, probably one of the more loud and outspoken people, as is my want, who went to the management of Free Speech TV and said, we've got to stop doing 4-week-long fund drives. It's exhausting everybody, including me. But I think it's exhausting our donors as well. And let's just, you know, bring them down to 2 weeks and ask people to respond quickly rather than dragging things out. And they listened and they did it. And this is a grand experiment, and we're behind. And maybe I was a dummy to suggest this. I don't know. But if you like 2-week fund drives instead of 4-week fund drives, call now, 877-378-8669, because like I said, we're behind. And we can't be behind. It's just, you know, we got bills to pay and, you know, electric lights that have to stay on and electrons that need to go to satellites and, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. So in order to provide people with the truth, in order to provide people with good, honest, straightforward information about what's going on in the world, how do taxes work, how does the economy work, how you know, what's up with, you know, big pharma, what's the latest outrage from big oil, you know, what's going on in Congress, what are the Republicans up to, what are the Democrats, who's running for president, all these issues that, you know, in the corporate media are largely dealt with as sports. Who's up, who's down, you know, or what scandal, you know, or if it bleeds, it leads, right? Where's there a scandal? You know, obviously we'll talk about scandal and we'll talk about who's up and down here, but the larger picture is the important part from my point of view, and I think from Free Speech TV's point of view, and I know the other hosts that I know personally, I know that that's their perspective as well. That we have to truthfully and you know, straightforward fashion be dealing with the issues of the day. And you can only do that when you're completely independent. And that's what my program is, and that's what Free Speech TV is. Nobody tells either one of us what to do, what to say, ever. And you know, the upside of that is that you can trust the information you get. And on the rare occasions when I get something wrong or other people on Free Speech TV get something wrong, you know, people reach out and say, hey, you, and we fix it. We correct it. So you can, you know, the trust is an important thing. Knowing that the information you're getting is really vitally important. So your contributions, 877-378-8669, your contribution given right now will be doubled up to $50,000 because of frontline funders Mike in San Francisco and Sandy in New Mexico. And if we can catch up today, because tomorrow's the last day, if we can catch up today, please call now. If we can catch up today, then there's an additional $10,000 that's going to go to Free Speech TV from frontline funders Bobby and Vivian in California, Delaney in Missouri, Brenda in Texas, Helen in Washington, John and Jean in Oregon, Joe in Washington, D.C., Charlene in Texas, Chuck in California, Thomas in Illinois, and Mark in Florida. So a big deal. But only if we hit our goal. So with the $20 gift, you have your choice of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the Free Speech TV Pride Cool-C. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the 5-pack of clear stickers or the Be a Superhero for Democracy tote bag. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the exclusive Thom Hartmann Free Speech TV mug, only available here. With a $100 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen, or spread the vote. You can help out voters in 19 states with a small portion of your gift going to spread the vote. With a $120 gift, there's my brand new book, an autographed copy of my brand new book, literally just out this week, The Hidden History of American Democracy, or the Free Speech TV Superhero Water Bottle. Actually came out last week, but you get the point. With $240 gift, our virtual meet and greet, and with a $1,000 gift, come here to Portland and hang out with us. And I realize that there's a long line for that, but hey, don't let that discourage you from making a $1,000 gift if you can afford to. Free Speech TV needs the money, and it's a big deal. And we are behind. Did I say we're behind? We're behind. So please, now is the perfect time to call 877-378-8669. Make your contribution. Make your voice heard. Step up for democracy. Step up for free speech in the United States through the Free Speech Television Network. It's such a great network. They're doing such a great job. We're out here working our butts off. I know that you appreciate the work we're doing, or you wouldn't be watching. So please, if you haven't pitched in already, do so now. 877-378-8669. Thank you. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, happy Thursday, Dienstag. It is, as I recall, it is the top of the hour. We had a lot to talk about today. Of course, there is a hurricane whacking Florida. You can't ignore that if you turn on the television. I'm not really certain how to comment on that beyond the fact that it appears to be a publicity bonanza for Governor DeSantis. We'll see how that turns out. But anyhow, that's happening. But I want to start off the program today by talking about how Americans don't understand the causes of crime. We'll get to that in a moment. In the United Kingdom, conservatives are doubling down on inequality, which I'm going to tell you in a moment is the main cause of crime in the United States. Dr. Stefanik Kelton will be with us in the second hour of our program. She, she's a professor of economics. She has a new book out, The Deficit Myth, Modern Monetary Theory and the Birth of the People's Economy. Fascinating book. We'll be talking with her about that. And also in our second hour, yes, Trump was more insane than anyone thought. We have the receipts from a trip to Japan. I'll tell you all about that in the second hour. And also, Alyssa Slotkin agrees that the Republican Party is brutal and violent. And she agrees to this on the floor of the House of Representatives. It's just an amazing little clip. Also in the second hour of the parade, it's going to be a packed hour, that second hour. Matt Castelli is dropping by, a former CIA officer running against Elise Stefanik, and one of the most toxic Republicans, number 3 in Republican leadership, and a genuine Trump humper. In our third hour, the economic indicators now say we are in a recession. We have the second quarter details. Are you feeling that recession where you live? We'll discuss that in the third hour of the program. And also, the Republican Party, specifically 3 Republicans on the Federal Elections Commission, are continuing to cover up crimes committed by, on behalf of, and to the benefit of Donald Trump. And I'll give you we'll do a deep dive on that in the third hour of our program today. So starting out with my daily take from HartmannReport.com today, America doesn't understand that inequality causes crime. You'll recall on Monday, I was talking about how the Democratic Party needs to, take seriously this whole issue of crime. They need to get ahead of it. They need to have a proactive stance. Sort of like Bill Clinton's 100,000 cops thing. A lot of what Clinton did was really good stuff. A lot of it was really wrong-headed. Amping up the war on drugs and stuff like that. But whatever you may think of it, in retrospect, now that we can look back and see what parts succeeded, what parts failed, it was well publicized, well coordinated, well done, and it took away from Republicans that cudgel of we're the tough on crime party that goes back to Richard Nixon and his war on drugs. But I think perhaps more interesting is what causes crime. Both violent crime, property crime, drug crimes, and even mental illness. And it turns out that one of the main drivers of crime and these other, social ills is inequality. We are wired, as are all mammals, we are wired for fairness. You don't think this is true? Walk into a preschool class, with 10 kids and give one of them a whole pile of cookies and give everybody else one cookie and just watch what happens. Or for that matter, walk into a dog park and give one dog a big pile of food and, just a little tiny taste to a few others. You will discover that mammals are wired for fairness. And why? Because it's a survival skill. We are social animals. Dogs are pack animals. We are social animals. We don't survive without a healthy society around us. And inequality is a sign of an unhealthy society. It is a cancer within a society. In the article, I talk about how, I worked in Uganda during a famine there in 1980. I was in the Philippines in '85. I was in Bogota, Colombia, working in a slum, a barrio. I worked in the Klong Toi slum in Bangkok. All over the world, I have worked in or interacted with very, very poor people in slums, basically, barrios and favelas and around the world. And what I found was that, there's crime there. Most of it is kind of the gangs that protect the communities, as it were. But there's not a lot of theft. They will not put up with this. I mean, if people are caught stealing, they are roundly punished. The real crime is caused not by poverty. The person who tried to break into our house, that I told you about on Monday, wasn't poor. She was very well dressed and walking a little dog. She wasn't hungry. She was a thief. I mean, and what happens is, in a society where the rich are obscenely rich and perceived as extremely rich, shooting their penis-shaped rockets into outer space with them atop them, when in that kind of society, you get this mentality of, rich people are stealing from us all the time. Why can't I? I'm just doing what everybody else does. Poverty doesn't cause the societal disintegration that leads to crime. Poverty is a symptom of that. It turns out inequality is what drives this. And, it is so often missed by people, but there's no, this is the social contract. And it's so often missed by people. Research published in the Oxford Economic Papers back in 2014. When the morbidly rich are conspicuous in their consumption, crime explodes faster than when they're discreet. Quote, using variation within U.S. states over time, we document a robust association between the distribution of conspicuous consumption and violent crime. A 2000 study published in the Review of Economics and Statistics at Harvard and MIT came to the same conclusion. Quote, inequality causes crime, not just poverty. The World Economic Forum published a paper in 2014 about the relationship between inequality and crime in Mexico. Quote, our key finding is that, in fact, municipalities with lower inequality saw lower rates of crime. In other words, while the overall national data reveals an apparent paradox, broken down by smaller geographical regions, the paradox does not hold. Less economic disparity does lead to less crime. The Economist magazine published a study of 148,000 people across 142 countries. Their headline, the stark relationship between income inequality and crime. Research published by the Equality Trust over at the UK, which studies the impact of economic and social inequality, found, quote, small permanent decreases in inequality, such as reducing inequality from the level found in Spain to that in Canada, would reduce homicides by 20% and lead to a 23% long-term reduction in robberies. And this is what I saw, back in the 80s during that decade or so that I was working in third world countries all around the world. Which brings us to the Republican Party. The Republican Party is completely committed to not only maintaining the United States as having the highest level of inequality in the developed world, but making it even worse. You got, Senator Ron Johnson talking about the IRS's jackbooted thugs. You got Republican Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming saying that, law-abiding Americans deserve better from their government than an army of bureaucrats snooping through their bank statements. In other words, no more IRS. He was arguing against funding the IRS so that they can finally afford to look into the tax returns of the morbidly rich. Republican Senator Ted Cruz, quote, throwing billions more taxpayer dollars at the IRS will only hurt Americans struggling to recover after waves of devastating lockdowns. Instead of increasing funding for the IRS, we should have abolished the damn place. Right, Republicans, they're in with the rich people because the Supreme Court legalized political bribery with Citizens United, and the Republicans are now, the billionaires of America have their fuel spigots right into the back pockets of the Republicans, and they're just pouring cash in there all day, every day. But the bottom line is, if we want to get crime under control in the United States, if we want to restore social cohesion in our society, because it's trust that is destroyed by inequality. People know Elon Musk doesn't work, a million times harder than the people on his assembly line. He came from this, Robert Reich says he came from a family that owned emerald mines and segregated in apartheid South Africa. People know, Bill Gates isn't 1,000 times more brilliant. No, his mother set up a deal. Robert Reich writing about this morning at Substack. His mother set up a deal for him to provide an operating system to IBM. I mean, people probably know that Jeff Bezos started out with a $250,000 loan for his business he started in his garage. No, not really. Today's CEOs take in hundreds to thousands of times more than their employees. Back when the top income tax rate was 91% or 74%, CEOs lived in the same communities as their workers. They only took 20 to 30 times what their workers take home. Today, it's completely out of control. So bottom line, if we want to restore social cohesion in the United States, if we want to restore trust and thus reduce crime, we need to start taxing the morbidly rich. It's that simple. Tax the morbidly rich. And we have, this science has proved this in literally 143 countries over and over and over again. Tax the morbidly rich and your crime rate goes down. We'll be right back. I got to tell you about what's going on in the UK too. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. We'll be right back. It's 17 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. The seeds of this inequality, of today's inequality in the United States, and it's huge. We are, as I said earlier, the most unequal society, developed society on earth. Now, the United Kingdom, Liz Truss just dropped the top tax rate from 45% down to 40% for morbidly rich people in the UK. It, of course, is tanking their economy very quickly. And the reason why it's doing that now and it didn't do it when Reagan did it is because, the world has now figured out that Reaganomics, now Trussonomics, is a scam. It's just a scam to help the rich people get richer and richer so that they can pour money into the campaigns of the people who are sucking up to them. And it's just, this is the bottom line. Stephen in Wausauke, Wisconsin. Am I saying that right, Stephen?
Yes, sir. Wausauke, Wisconsin.
Hey, you're on the air. What's up?
Yeah, good morning, Tom. I was just listening how you're pushing a socialist program.
You're right. Just like, Medicare is socialism, so Social Security is socialism. Arguably, progressive taxation is socialism. And yes, I am a fan of those things. I'm not a fan of the socialism that Karl Marx promoted, or that was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. I realize, Republicans don't know the difference between socialism in the Soviet Union and socialism in Denmark. But I'm a fan of Denmark-style democratic socialism.
So the Republicans, how are the Democrats getting rich?
I don't understand your question.
I just asked you, how is Pelosi and Schumer and them becoming so wealthy?
Well, I don't know about Schumer. Pelosi's husband was wealthy when they, has been wealthy for a long time, I assume, when they got married. But the fact of the matter is, Stephen, that if you're talking about corruption within a political party, Stephen is trying to talk over me. You can just pot him down a little. The fact of the matter is, if you're talking about corruption within a political party, we have a real problem in the United States right now. And there are some Democrats who don't want to stop the ability of members of Congress from trading stocks on inside information. And I think that that's wrong. But it's not Democrats who are promoting inequality, and it's not Democrats who are promoting tax cuts for the rich. It's Republicans, Stephen.
About capitalism in America. People go to college to become more educated so they can have a better job. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, so now you're saying they come out of college and they should be making the same kind of wage.
No, I'm not saying that. I have no problem with my doctor making more than the guy who cleans this office. I think the guy who cleans this office should make enough to have a dignified life. But Stephen, you're desperately trying to do the old Republican trick of pretending that apples are oranges or tossing up straw man arguments, and it's silly.
If he had the right reason, I would vote for a Democrat. But I sure wouldn't vote for Pelosi or Schumer.
Well, I doubt you live in California or New York, do you? No, you live in Wisconsin, so you're not going to have an opportunity to. But will you vote for Ron Johnson?
I wouldn't live in
Ron
New
Johnson
York
wants to end the IRS. Are you going to vote for him or cut it back?
Who?
Ron Johnson. He's your senator. He's up.
Yes, he's doing a good job. The guy that's running against us, he's going to defund the police.
Right. Okay, yeah. You're believing the lies about Mandela Barnes that are being promoted by the Republican Party. That's really tragic, Stephen. It's really tragic. We'll be right back. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So you know what's happening in the United States with Reaganomics. Reagan, of course, dropped the top tax rate from 74% down to 25%. It has slowly floated back up into the low 30s, but even that is nothing close to what you really need in order to produce changes in behavior by the morbidly rich. And now we see over in the United Kingdom, the new prime minister, the new conservative prime minister, Liz Truss, just rolled out this, just eliminated the top tax bracket, just eliminated it altogether. So the morbidly rich now will pay the tax rate of the merely rich, of the merely well off. And Guardian columnist Owen Jones, summarized this. He said, following reports, the UK Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Chris Philip, will send letters asking government departments to identify potential savings. I'm sorry, this is not a quote from the Guardian. This Tory, the UK Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Chief Chris Phillips, he confirmed Wednesday on television that they are now going to look for efficiencies in government. Right. The National Health Service in the United Kingdom just reported that that roofs on their buildings are in danger of collapsing because they haven't been, there hasn't been enough money allocated to maintain them in decades because of conservative rule in the United Kingdom. And what's Liz Truss's response? Well, I bet you she's going to try and privatize large chunks of the National Health Service, just like George W. Bush has privatized now more than half, 51% of Medicare. And once it's fully privatized, hey, buddy, you're on your own. Suddenly a whole lot of Brits are going to discover that they have no access to health care unless they want to pay, £1,000 a month to a health insurance company or more. Liberal Democrats, that's a party in the United Kingdom, their health spokesperson and deputy leader, Daisy Cooper, went after the Chancellor of the Exchequer, their equivalent of Treasury Secretary. His name is Kwasi Kwarteng. And she said, Kwasi Kwarteng's first budget, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing, First budget prioritized slashing taxes on the big banks over fixing crumbling hospitals. There was a deafening silence from government on how it intends to deal with dangerous ambulance wait times or lack of local NHS dentists, let alone buildings at risk of collapse. This is a disaster waiting to happen, and conservative ministers don't seem to care. Although there are some Tory members, some of these conservative members of Parliament, in this case, members of Parliament, MPs, who are concerned. This is from this Guardian piece. They are not mincing their words in off-record conversation. This is just like in the United States. You know, you get Republicans off the record. They're saying, yeah, Trump is nuts. He's a threat to democracy. On the record, oh, we love Donald Trump. Bend over a little more so I can kiss your butt, please. So anyhow, back to the UK. This person for the Liberal Democratic Party says the inept, humiliating, naive, and reckless are just some of the words that have cropped up to describe the Chancellor of the Exchequer, their Treasury Secretary over there. Over at the International Monetary Fund, which applauded Reagan's tax cuts. I mean, it's a neoliberal institution. They applauded Reagan's tax cuts. They applauded Trump Jr.'s tax cuts, or excuse me, Bush Jr.'s tax cuts. They applauded Trump's tax cuts. They're looking at the British tax cuts, and they're going, whoa. This is literally what the IMF said, quote, the mini budget will likely increase inequality, end quote. They said that the UK government has, quote, an early opportunity to consider ways to provide support that is more targeted and reevaluate the tax measures, especially those that benefit high-income earners. In other words, 40 years of Reaganomics, 40 years of neoliberal economics, what I write about in my new book, The Hidden History of Neoliberalism, how Reaganism gutted America. This 42-year experiment that has been going on in the United States and 43 years in the United Kingdom, the results are now in, to the point that the economists at the International Monetary Fund are saying, yeah, tax cuts on rich people make rich people richer, they make the country indebted, and they do absolutely nothing for anybody else. They don't stimulate the economy, they don't lead to increases in employment, they don't reduce unemployment, they don't do anything other than make rich people richer and make the country go into debt. But what Liz Truss is planning to do, mark my words, is exactly what Reagan did. This isn't just about tax cuts for the rich. This is about starve the beast. Cut back on, the next step you're going to hear is we can't afford these public services anymore. We can't afford a generous welfare state. We can't afford a national health service. We've got to cut back because we don't have the tax revenue anymore. That, you know, David Stockman laid it out. That was Reagan's plan. He called it starve the beast. And now you're going to see starve the beast in the UK. And look at what it's done to America. It has gutted our middle class.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So are you noticing this where you live? Are you seeing the effects of Reaganomics? How do you think this is going to play out in the UK and around the world? Well, here I am with my Free Speech TV swag. It is the Free Speech TV, freespeech.org hat, which, by the way, has the URL on it. So you're promoting Free Speech TV. I have my Free Speech TV notebook and pen right here. And it's really, this is a nice premium one, with one of these little bands that holds, you can see which page you're on and holds it there. And the Colsey? I forget what they're. Cool-C is what they're called. Keep your cup cool. It says diversity on it, and it's got all these rainbow colors. And of course, my Free Speech TV mug, all kinds of goodies. And the reason I mention these things is because we're still behind. It's a little worrying. There are 2 days left, and I have to tell you, I was one of the people, probably one of the more loud and outspoken people, as is my want, who went to the management of Free Speech TV and said, we've got to stop doing 4-week-long fund drives. It's exhausting everybody, including me. But I think it's exhausting our donors as well. And let's just, bring them down to 2 weeks and ask people to respond quickly rather than dragging things out. And they listened and they did it. And this is a grand experiment, and we're behind. And maybe I was a dummy to suggest this. I don't know. But if you like 2-week fund drives instead of 4-week fund drives, call now, 877-378-8669, because like I said, we're behind. And we can't be behind. It's just, we got bills to pay and, electric lights that have to stay on and electrons that need to go to satellites and, all kinds of stuff like that. So in order to provide people with the truth, in order to provide people with good, honest, straightforward information about what's going on in the world, how do taxes work, how does the economy work, how what's up with big pharma, what's the latest outrage from big oil, what's going on in Congress, what are the Republicans up to, what are the Democrats, who's running for president, all these issues that in the corporate media are largely dealt with as sports. Who's up, who's down, or what scandal, or if it bleeds, it leads, right? Where's there a scandal? Obviously we'll talk about scandal and we'll talk about who's up and down here, but the larger picture is the important part from my point of view, and I think from Free Speech TV's point of view, and I know the other hosts that I know personally, I know that that's their perspective as well. That we have to truthfully and straightforward fashion be dealing with the issues of the day. And you can only do that when you're completely independent. And that's what my program is, and that's what Free Speech TV is. Nobody tells either one of us what to do, what to say, ever. And the upside of that is that you can trust the information you get. And on the rare occasions when I get something wrong or other people on Free Speech TV get something wrong, people reach out and say, hey, you, and we fix it. We correct it. So you can, the trust is an important thing. Knowing that the information you're getting is really vitally important. So your contributions, 877-378-8669, your contribution given right now will be doubled up to $50,000 because of frontline funders Mike in San Francisco and Sandy in New Mexico. And if we can catch up today, because tomorrow's the last day, if we can catch up today, please call now. If we can catch up today, then there's an additional $10,000 that's going to go to Free Speech TV from frontline funders Bobby and Vivian in California, Delaney in Missouri, Brenda in Texas, Helen in Washington, John and Jean in Oregon, Joe in Washington, D.C., Charlene in Texas, Chuck in California, Thomas in Illinois, and Mark in Florida. So a big deal. But only if we hit our goal. So, with a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the Free Speech TV Pride Coolsey. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the 5-pack of clear stickers or the Be a Superhero for Democracy tote bag. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the exclusive Thom Hartmann Free Speech TV mug, only available here. With a $100 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen, or Spread the Vote. You can help out voters in 19 states with a small portion of your gift going to Spread the Vote. With a $120 gift, there's my brand new book, an autographed copy of my brand new book, literally just out this week, The Hidden History of American Democracy, or the Free Speech TV Superhero Water Bottle. Actually came out last week, but you get the point. With $240 gift, our virtual meet and greet, and with a $1,000 gift, come here to Portland and hang out with us. And I realize that there's a long line for that, but hey, don't let that discourage you from making a $1,000 gift if you can afford to. Free Speech TV needs the money, and it's a big deal, and we are behind. Did I say we're behind? We're behind. So please, now is the perfect time to call. 877-378-8669. Make your contribution. Make your voice heard. Step up for democracy. Step up for free speech in the United States through the Free Speech Television Network. It's such a great network. They're doing such a great job. We're out here working our butts off. I know that you appreciate the work we're doing, or you wouldn't be watching. So please, if you haven't pitched in already, do so now. 877-378-8669. Thank you. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Welcome back. A lot to talk about today, from inequality to crime to is Trump more insane than anybody thought, to economic indicators. Are we in a recession? Any of the topics that we've discussed so far this week, in fact, economic indicators say we're in a recession. We'll get to that. When are Republicans going to wake up? I had a Republican caller earlier today. During the last break, or the 15-minute break, and saying, oh well, Ron Johnson's doing a great job here in Wisconsin, and inequality is not a problem, and we need to do away with the IRS. Really? Anyhow, let's pick up your calls here at 202-808-9925. Charles in Santa Monica. Hey, Charles, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how are you doing?
I'm well. What's up?
I wanted to get your take on Yanis Varoufakis and the economic system he outlined in this he did it in a novel form called Another Now, but basically...
Is this the former Greek foreign minister or finance minister?
Yeah.
Okay.
And basically, he has this alternate reality in which he lays out these different principles, one of which is flat management within corporate structure, and the inability to sell and trade shares, and every employee within a company having one person, one vote ownership of that company, but not, other than that, not restricting capitalism. I just found it kind of fascinating. I was wondering if you were familiar with it and had any thoughts.
I'm not familiar with his book, but I wrote a book called Threshold, The Crisis of Western Civilization, which is now out of print. But in that book, or for that book, I went to a number of places around the world. Louise and I went to Mondragon in Spain, the largest nonprofit cooperative in the world. It's like $60 billion a year. They've got offices and manufacturing facilities around the world. The CEO makes 4 times what the lowest paid employee makes. And it's entirely owned by its employees. In fact, they have their own housing there in the town of Mondragon. And I also went up to Madison, Wisconsin. You got I think it's Peninsula Manufacturing. There's a company up there that does this tool and die shop that does some really amazing stuff. Union Cab Company, one of the few fully unionized cab companies. Which I believe is also owned by its employees. I could be wrong, but I believe that's the case. And my conclusion was that employee-owned cooperatives are not just a viable alternative to traditional capitalism, but a healthy and can be vibrant alternative. So if that's what he's pitching, I'm all in.
I think he got some of his ideas when he worked with Patagonia. And, the owner of Patagonia just divested himself of the company and turned it over to a trust where all the profits would be going to basically help climate change or something.
Yeah, we had their CEO on this program many years ago talking about that. Yeah, I think that one of the problems is that there's only a handful of states where you can start what are called beneficent corporations. A corporation where your shareholders, where your corporation is devoted or dedicated to doing basically good in the world, and the shareholders and employees have the employees have a larger say in how the corporation is run. It's not quite a co-op, but for example, the publishing company that publishes my Hidden History series, Barrett Kohler, out of San Francisco, they're a B corporation. They're one of these special kinds of corporations. So there's a lot of experimenting going on. And worker co-ops and things. And I think it's all good stuff. These are ways that you reduce inequality. But the top line way to reduce inequality is to tax the rich. It just comes right down to that. Charles, I got to move along, but thanks for the call. Chaz in Lakewood, Washington. Hey, Chaz, what's on your mind today?
Queso Knoll, Tom.
What language is that today, Chaz?
That is the Welsh language, and henceforth for this call, I wish to be referred to as King Chaz III, because it turns out I'm a Charles III also.
Oh, that's interesting. My mother was Welsh, and to the day she died, never forgave the current king of England for usurping the title, which she believes is part of her genealogy. She was a big genealogy freak, and the Prince of Wales was actually a prince who was Welsh, not some British.
So feel free to dub me as a colonizer.
Okay. So what's up, Chaz?
On the subject of inequality, Mr. Hartman.
Yes.
All right. It kind of irks me that I've got some politicians in our state legislature who are kind of pulling for charter schools. I just don't understand how a charter school system could work, because there are going to be a permanent underclass of people roaming the streets, picking at the bones of our grandparents. And first of all, a CEO of a charter school, maybe they got $1 million portfolio. I can't vote them out, but I can vote out a politician. I just don't understand a single thing about charter schools that works.
Right. Well, and public schools, you have a school board, and you can join the school board. You can petition the school board. The school board can fire, employees within the school system, including the management of the schools. Charter schools, it depends on the state, because rules vary from state to state. But broadly speaking, charter schools are just another variety of private schools that have been heavily promoted by the Gates Foundation and by, the Clintons back in the 90s and other democratically aligned folks. And of course, they've had the Republican Party behind them from the get-go.
And I don't know if this is allied, but I had a stepsister went to a religious school, and eventually things just fell apart. And she got to the public school and found out she was 2 years behind everybody else. Yeah,
it doesn't surprise me. This is one of the big problems with these private schools is that, generally speaking, they don't have, again, it varies from state to state, but generally speaking, they don't have to adhere to the standards, the quality of education standards or the quality of learning standards or the threshold of learning for graduation standards that you find in public schools. Our public school system in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s was considered the envy of, in fact, from 1900, our public school system really started in the 1880s with Horace Mann's efforts in Boston. And then, Massachusetts was the first state to institute statewide public schools, and pretty soon they had spread all across the country. And so by 1910 or thereabouts, most states had robust public school systems. And we spent the next 30 years fine-tuning and tweaking them to maximize public good. And, by the 50s, or even the 40s, our public school systems were the envy of the world. They were, and Eisenhower came in and built tens of thousands of brand gleaming new public schools all across the country. We had programs for handicapped kids as well as for gifted kids, which is a category that is largely ignored now in our public education system, tragically. Go ahead.
If charter schools were so great, wouldn't they just be able to sustain on their own?
Well, in theory, but they're private schools, and so you're asking people to pay for private education. So no, charter schools cannot function without public funding, and neither can most religious schools. And which is why Republicans are working so hard to shovel as much tax money as possible. Arizona just Doug Ducey in Arizona just signed legislation offering a voucher to every single student in Arizona. This is an open declaration of war on unionized, standardized, high-quality public education. And so what you're going to end up with is, because the vouchers don't cover the entire cost of going to school, what you're going to end up with is that those families that can afford to kick in an extra $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 a year to send their kids to good, high-quality charter schools and high-quality private schools, and yes, there are some out there, they will be the ones who are taking advantage of the vouchers. And and people living at the poverty level are going to be sending their kids to the public schools, which are going to turn into basically educational ghettos. And we've seen this in state after state where this happens, and it's just going to get worse and worse. Chaz, I got to move along. Go ahead. Last thought.
No. I was just filling in some time. Thank you very much,
Okay,
Tom.
Thanks, Chaz. Rex in Tacoma, Washington. Hey, Rex, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Listened to your show for years and years, and every day I get educated.
Thank you.
I have relatives in England, and I talk to them, my uncles, once a week, and I've done that for over 10 years, and they're already starving the beast. Their hospital system, their medical system has slowly been deteriorating, and I tried to warn my uncle. Exactly.
Alan, I'm sorry, Rex. Your phone is breaking up. Go ahead. Now you're back. Oh, now you're gone.
Oh,
Rex, I'm sorry. Your phone is going in and out here. I'm going to have to drop the call, but I get your point. And what they're doing in the United Kingdom, and they've been doing for over a decade now, the conservative governments, is exactly what Ronald Reagan was doing in the United States. And what you're seeing with our public education system in the United States. In the UK, you're seeing it with the public health system. And that is, you damage public institutions by defunding them. It's what Trump tried to do by cutting the staff at the Social Security Division in half, laying off half, 20, I believe it was 22,000 employees, if I'm remembering right. Check my numbers, because I may be wrong on that. This is from memory. But, laying off thousands, tens of thousands of employees in federal agencies, the IRS, the HHS, Health and Human Services, which oversees Social Security and Medicare. And then when people start complaining, going, hey, I call Social Security, I'm on hold for an hour and a half, and I can't get a person, and nobody, you say, oh, well, that's because it's government. Government's no good. We're going to privatize that. Pretty soon you're just going to be dealing with J.P. Morgan Chase. And then, of course, you'll get to deal with a computer instead of a person. But, hey, isn't that wonderful? Don't we all just love our banks? That's what they want to do. They want to turn Social Security over to the banks. And, step one is to kneecap it. And it's exactly what the conservatives in the UK have been doing to the National Health Service and to other programs in the UK. And they're doing it here in the United States as well. It's called austerity. It's called neoliberalism. It's called the destruction of a country.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls here in the place where smart people get their news in just a moment. Sean was just pointing out to me that that austerity is working when you see your suicide rates go up. And it's true. It's true. The BBC, I used to pull this article. I've got a pile of stuff in the back here. I used to pull this article out every year and do a rant on it. It was like my annual rant. But the BBC published an article back, 15 years ago, or thereabouts, maybe even longer, maybe around 2001. Pointing out that they had just done a 99-year study in the UK and Australia, and every year that conservatives were in power, suicides went up, and every year that liberals were in power, progressives were in power, suicides went down in those two countries. And it was a measurable, quantifiable. I mean, it was just nuts. So picking up your calls, Gar in Decatur, Georgia. Hey, Gar, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
Good. What's up?
That's good. I want to talk a little bit about education.
Go for it.
I looked at the word education, which is Latin, comes from Latin, which means to bring forth, to bring out of ignorance. So the point that I was trying to say to your screener is that if you're not bringing people out of ignorance, if you're not bringing people forth, then it's not education. And the one thing we got to understand in our capitalism, just like in the NFL, Major League Baseball, soccer, basketball, to knock out the competition.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. Knock out the competition. That's why, and what they call TV, what they call it, programming. That's what it is. It's programming. It's not education. It's programming. It's programming people not to compete. And if they do compete, they slow them down. Because I used to work at a health club. And there was a lot of kids at the health club. And the young African-American kids always seemed to be, the other kids would follow them. And as they grew up, it seemed like they had programs where they would slow them down a little bit. It's about knocking out the competition. And what backs the dollar is the police department and the military. They don't need gold. They got something better than gold. They got the military. I hear people talk about worthless dollar. Go in that bank and try to take some of that worthless dollar.
Yeah.
And see what happens. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gar. A fascinating analysis. Thank you. Carol in Monessen, Pennsylvania. Hey, Carol, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I was just thinking about the inequality of some of our systems. For example, Social Security tax. If you make over $147,000 a year, you don't pay. Why do the poor have to subsidize the rich? I don't understand.
Because the rich bought enough politicians to make it happen.
Oh,
it's a very simple answer. I'm sorry, Carol. You know this, by the way.
I do, yeah.
But that's what's been going on. This is, it was 1976 when the Supreme Court first tried to legalize political bribery in the United States, overturning 2 centuries of law here and doing something that had never been done in any other democratic country in the world, saying, it's just fine if you want to buy politicians, if you want to bribe politicians. We're not going to call it bribery anymore. We're not going to call it political corruption. We're going to call it free speech. Money is not money. Money is speech. Now, it's been, maybe when I was a teenager and taking psychedelics, the money in my pocket talked to me, but it hasn't since then. And frankly, I have no memory of doing that. But I can't imagine other, circumstances other than tripping when, a person might say, well, my money is talking to me. It's, but the Supreme Court has decided that money talks. It is speech. We'll be right back. Hey, I have a new book out. It's called The Hidden History of Neoliberalism, How Reaganism Gutted America and How to Restore Its Greatness. Greg Palast calls it a hand grenade of a book. You can pick it up wherever fine books are available. Tag you're it. It's 10 minutes before the hour. To Alan in Joliet, Illinois. Hey, Alan, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, I got a thing with Social Security. How to solve the Social Security problem.
Okay, go for it.
You take the caps off and pass the Constitution. Remember that you can't touch that at wartime or any other time, and not put their hands in it for other things. And they solve the problem completely. That the rich keep paying like the rest of us do.
That's interesting.
Pass the Constitution.
I could see a constitutional amendment that explicitly states that when the Constitution was written and it says the general welfare in both the preamble and in Article 1, Section 8, that it is referring to programs that provide what is referred to as the social safety net in the United States, and the constitutionality of these programs shall not be questioned by the courts. Something to that effect. Because a lot of the whacking, the hits against our Social Security system and other social welfare programs in the United States have come from the Supreme Court and from the court system, although a lot of them come from Republicans too. But interesting idea, Alan. Thank you very much for the call, and thanks for making that suggestion. Don, I'm sorry, in Chicago. Hey, Don, what's on your mind today?
Hi, I was just talking about the inflation problem we've got going on now and how large it is. And multiple of, I teach economics in college. We have a lot of factors that have caused inflation, and traditionally it's, just basically a supply-demand thing. As our supply of, for example, it's harder to get energy now, that increases the cost. We need to look at money, at the U.S. dollar as a commodity. The more we print of it, the more we make of it, the more we spend of it that we don't have, increases the supply of the U.S. dollar. Once you do that, there's more of it, it has less value, so it takes more dollars to buy things. Our national debt is like some $30 trillion, and almost over half of it is owned by China and other countries.
No, not true. China owns about $1 billion, about $1 trillion of our debt.
Well, actually, the last
fairly small percentage.
Last funding we had, China bought 70% of it.
No, not true.
Yes,
they might have bought 70% of the offering, but they don't own 70% of our national debt.
No, I never said they don't own 70% of our debt. I said they own other countries own over half of our debt.
I don't believe that
China
too.
being one of the biggest. So the printing of money,
that has the national debt does not increase the money supply, Don.
When we print money we don't have, we put money.
The national debt is not printing money you don't have. It is the federal government borrowing money from people who have money.
Right, and when we borrow money, we increase the amount of money.
We do not.
Print paper.
That's
for
not
money.
true.
Yes, we do.
No, the money supply. The money supply is regulated by the Fed and by banks. Basically, the more lending that banks do, the larger your money supply. If you want to reduce the money supply, you raise interest rates. Banks do less lending. As less lending happens, the money supply decreases. The money supply and the national debt have no relationship to each other, Don. And at that point, I'm going to move along. Jerry in Kissimmee, Florida. Hey, Jerry, how you doing in the flood here, in the tornadoes, hurricanes?
Well, I'm fine. Thanks for asking. Here in this area, I'm a little south of Disney and Kissimmee, Pontiana area. We just had wind and rain. And actually, the sun popped out for a while about 3 minutes ago. So other than some leaves and some palm in my neighborhood I see blowing around, that's about it. We're very lucky.
That's good, yeah.
Thank you, Tom. I wanted to comment about education. Called before. I'm a retired educator from New York. I worked in public schools and worked really against the charter takeover of schools in Harlem, where I'm from, where I grew up, and where I taught schools. Mm-hmm. And as an example, I don't really like to name people, but I'll have to. Jeffrey Canada, who has been looked at as the Superman, and then, of course, you have Eva Moskowitz, who really took over all the public schools in Harlem with charter schools. And in my particular experience in a school I was in, when they came in with the charter school in our building, we were the public school, the kids were segregated. So our students couldn't go to their side of the building, but we were there first. We had been there for over a decade. They had catered lunch. They had trips to the Caribbean when they had tests and state tests, and some of their kids did good. I couldn't even get money if the New York Knicks to give me tickets to a game to get passes to take my students to a Knicks game at night. I used to have to go into my own pocket.
Right.
So they had all of these things that they had working for them, which were draining the public schools. Then they had all of this corporate money coming in. But yet my school outperformed their school year after year in academic testing. And, of course, we even beat them in sports like basketball when we would have intramural games against them. Wow. But this was a policy by Mayor Bloomberg who really destroyed public schools in Central Harlem.
Yeah, a conservative neoliberal. The D.C., I lived in D.C. for 7 years, and during that time, I'm pretty sure pretty much the entire D.C. public school system is now charter schools.
Yes, and the Success Academy pays herself more than the school's chancellor of New York City to run 1,200 schools of 1 million students. Talk about the takeover, Katrina and
Jerry, your phone is breaking up here, but your point is that the people who are running these charter schools are making a pile of money, too.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Jerry, I got to run, but thank you very much for the call. Hey, Randy, I'm going to have to put you on hold. I'm sorry, it's the end of the hour. We'll be right back, though. Dr. Stefanik Kelton is going to drop by and talk about the deficit myth. And yes, Trump was more insane than anybody thought. And Alyssa Slotkin agrees that the GOP is brutal and violent. We'll talk about all those things on the other side of this break. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. Well, here I am with my Free Speech TV swag. It is the Free Speech TV freespeech.org hat, which, by the way, has the URL on it. So you're promoting Free Speech TV. I have my Free Speech TV notebook and pen right here. And it's really, this is a nice premium one, with one of these little bands that holds, you can see which page you're on and holds it there. And the Colsey, I forget what they're, Cool C is what they're called. Keep your cup cool. It says diversity on it, and it's got all these rainbow colors. And of course, my Free Speech TV mug, all kinds of goodies. And the reason I mention these things is because we're still behind. It's a little worrying. There are 2 days left. And I have to tell you, I was one of the people, probably one of the more loud and outspoken people, as is my want, who went to the management of Free Speech TV and said, we've got to stop doing 4-week-long fund drives. It's exhausting everybody, including me. But I think it's exhausting our donors as well. And let's just, bring them down to 2 weeks and ask people to respond quickly rather than dragging things out. And they listened and they did it. And this is a grand experiment, and we're behind. And maybe I was a dummy to suggest this. I don't know. But if you like 2-week fund drives instead of 4-week fund drives, call now, 877-378-8669, because like I said, we're behind. And we can't be behind. It's just, we got bills to pay and, electric lights that have to stay on and electrons that need to go to satellites and, all kinds of stuff like that. So in order to provide people with the truth, in order to provide people with good, honest, straightforward information about what's going on in the world, how do taxes work, how does the economy work, how what's up with big pharma, what's the latest outrage from big oil, what's going on in Congress, what are the Republicans up to, what are the Democrats, who's running for president, all these issues that in the corporate media are largely dealt with as sports. Who's up, who's down, or what scandal, or if it bleeds, it leads, right? Where's there a scandal? Obviously we'll talk about scandal and we'll talk about who's up and down here, but the larger picture is the important part from my point of view, and I think from Free Speech TV's point of view, and I know the other hosts that I know personally, I know that that's their perspective as well. That we have to truthfully and straightforward fashion be dealing with the issues of the day. And you can only do that when you're completely independent. And that's what my program is, and that's what Free Speech TV is. Nobody tells either one of us what to do, what to say, ever. And the upside of that is that you can trust the information you get. And on the rare occasions when I get something wrong or other people on Free Speech TV get something wrong, people reach out and say, hey, you, and we fix it. We correct it. So you can, the trust is an important thing. Knowing that the information you're getting is really vitally important. So your contributions, 877-378-8669, your contribution given right now will be doubled up to $50,000 because of frontline funders Mike in San Francisco and Sandy in New Mexico. And if we can catch up today, because tomorrow's the last day, if we can catch up today, please call now. If we can catch up today, then there's an additional $10,000 that's going to go to Free Speech TV from frontline funders Bobby and Vivian in California, Delaney in Missouri, Brenda in Texas, Helen in Washington, John and Jean in Oregon, Joe in Washington, D.C., Charlene in Texas, Chuck in California, Thomas in Illinois, and Mark in Florida. So a big deal, but only if we hit our goal. So with a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the Free Speech TV Pride Coolsy. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the 5-pack of clear stickers or the Be a Superhero for Democracy tote bag. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the exclusive Thom Hartmann Free Speech TV mug, only available here. With a $100 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or Spread the Vote. You can help out voters in 19 states with a small portion of your gift going to Spread the Vote. With a $120 gift, there's my brand new book, an autographed copy of my brand new book, literally just out this week, The Hidden History of American Democracy, or the Free Speech TV Superhero Water Bottle. Actually came out last week, but you get the point. With $240 gift, our virtual meet and greet, and with a $1,000 gift, come here to Portland and hang out with us. And I realize that there's a long line for that, but hey, don't let that discourage you from making a $1,000 gift if you can afford to. Free Speech TV needs the money. And it's a big deal. And we are behind. Did I say we're behind? We're behind. So please, now is the perfect time to call. 877-378-8669. Make your contribution. Make your voice heard. Step up for democracy. Step up for free speech in the United States through the Free Speech Television Network. It's such a great network. They're doing such a great job. We're out here working our butts off. I know that you appreciate the work we're doing or you wouldn't be watching. So please, if you haven't pitched in already, do so now. 877-378-8669. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the second hour of our program. On the line with us is Dr. Stefanik Kelton, professor of economics at Stony Brook University, executive director of the Modern Monetary Theory Project, a leading expert on MMT, former chief economist of the U.S. Senate Budget Committee on the Democratic staff, the author of the new book, The Deficit Myth, Modern Monetary Theory and the Birth of the People's Economy. Professor Dr. All of the above, Stefanik Kelton. Welcome back to, and Stefanik Kelton on Twitter. Welcome back to the program. Give us a synopsis, if you would, of your book, of The Deficit Myth. Why the myth of the deficit? Why combine those words?
Well, for lots of reasons. I mean, the title is singular when it's, the deficit myth, but unfortunately, there are many myths when it comes to how we think about public money, taxes, the purpose of taxes, the role of the deficit and the so-called national debt. So the first 6 chapters of the book are really about myth busting, trying to, get people to have a better understanding of government finance and government's finances and why they're different from household finances or the finances of a private business or even a state or local government. So, the book came out in June of 2020, actually, and then the paperback came out more recently. But what it was trying to do was to say to us, we've been basically at best misled and at worst lied to about a lot of really important things, including the capacity of the federal government to spend more on programs that are broadly popular, whether it's healthcare or education or climate or any of the other things. What you tended to hear was there is no money, and we would get embroiled in these fights about how to pay for it. And so this book kind of tried to come in and reset the debate so that we aren't arguing about how to find the money, because that's the easy part, but instead having a more difficult conversation about how to make choices when it comes to federal budgeting, and more importantly, or at least as important, how to manage the inflationary pressures that could arise as governments begin to approach spending through a different lens.
Isn't much of the key to this that the family metaphor that Reagan was so fond of, and even the individual states you mentioned, I believe there's only one state in the union that does not require a balanced budget every year. Neither my family or yours, nor the state you live in, nor mine, has the ability to print their own money. Controls, none of us control our own money supply. Isn't that one of the keys to understanding this?
It is. So in the book, I start off in the very first chapter is called Don't Think of a Household, because that's where everything goes wrong. Once you start thinking of government as needing to balance its budget in the same way that you and I do, or that a private business must over time, that we have to recognize that the federal government is the issuer of our currency. In fact, they have the sole legal authority to issue the US dollar. I can't do it. You can't do it, at least not legally, right? We can counterfeit the currency. We can try to get away with that. But, it's not legal, and we'll go to jail if we get caught. So you and I are users of the currency. A private business is a currency user. Mayors and governors are users of the currency, which, Tom, when the pandemic hit, right? Everybody understood this immediately because 22 million people lost their jobs in the first 2 months of the pandemic. Businesses were told, you can't open your doors to customers, your nail salon, your restaurant, your bar, your, gym, and so forth. You can't open your doors. You can't have customers. You don't get revenue. Businesses said, how am I supposed to stay in business if I can't turn a profit, if I can't generate revenue? And mayors and governors were pleading with the federal government, you have to help us because we're not going to be able to pay to, provide essential services, health and fire and police and the rest, because the economy is being, large parts of the economy shut down. So everyone turned to the federal government and said, we need help. The unemployed, people who were at risk of, losing their business, going under, missing a mortgage payment or a rent payment, mayors, governors, everybody said, you got to help us. Now, why? Why did they all think the federal government was in any better position to spend money than everybody else? And the answer is because on some level, we really do understand this key difference that you just described, which is that they issue the currency, they can never run out. They get to decide how much they're willing to commit to spending, and the money will go out. If the bills are there and the votes are there to pass that legislation, the money will go out. The rest of us are in a very different position.
Yeah, I had a caller to the program just maybe an hour and a half ago, a Republican caller who was going on and on about how the national debt is when the government is printing too much money and China owns half of it and it's causing inflation because we're printing too much money. I tried to explain to him, the national debt is the government issuing bonds that are bought by people with money. The government is what's creating the money. It's the Fed and the banking system. It's not through our national. Can you clean this up? What is causing the inflation we're having right now, and what's the relationship between inflation, the national debt, and our money supply?
Tom, how much time are we together?
Well, we have about 6 minutes.
Doggone it. So, okay, first, let's tackle the inflation question because, this is obviously hotly debated. We've been debating this really for the better part of a year, economists and others. What is really driving the inflation? We knew in the early phase, sort of spring of 2021, when inflation started to pick up, we knew what was driving that. There was something weird happening with used car prices, and that was driving almost all of the increase in headline inflation numbers. Now, inflation has broadened into other categories since then. The pandemic, the bottlenecks in the supply chain, the shifting of the way that people wanted to spend money. We couldn't spend, like I said earlier, on a bunch of services because we weren't allowed to go into coffee shops and bars and restaurants and salons and movie theaters. And so we started spending on goods. Well, goods have to be produced somewhere, and we have these supply chains that go wrap around the world, and things got snarled up. And so part of the reason that inflation broadened out is because consumers started shifting the way that they wanted to spend money. And then you layer on top of that a whole bunch of stuff that happened afterwards with Delta and Omicron and shutdowns in different parts of the world. Taiwan, a factory here that makes computer chips, in China for a period of time. And then you got Russia and Ukraine and the whole rest of it. So I wrote a little essay and I put it on my Substack a while ago. And I said, what is causing inflation? Is it A, this, B, this, sort of like a multiple choice test of the kind that some professors give their students. And I said, it's A through Z. It's a little bit of everything. It's concentration in industries that allows, companies with a lot of market power to push prices higher, taking advantage in some cases of the inflationary environment to say, listen, I can more than get away with raising prices to offset the rising costs I'm facing. I'm gonna squeeze out a little bit more. I'm gonna get the consumer to pay even more than it would take just to cover rising wages, rising raw materials and input costs and energy and the rest of it. So profiteering, you go down the list and the answer is, Z, all of the above. But some things matter more than others.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, your Substack newsletter is absolutely great. It's called The Lens. The website is stephaniekelton.substack.com, and I subscribe to it, and I recommend it. I think it's just a marvelous job that you're doing. So with regard to this, how your final chapter is titled "Building an Economy for the People." Dr. Stephanie Kelton, where do we begin with this?
Well, we were sort of trying, right? Here we have this period of time where Congress demonstrated that when the will is there, right, when something is deemed a priority, like holding the economy together through a pandemic, that Congress can actually muster the legislation and the votes to pass that legislation, and we can protect lives and livelihoods. Now, we can debate how good a job we did in some areas of that, but the point is Congress, pushed through 3 pieces of legislation that in total amounted to about $5 trillion, and they did it in 12 months' time. So when the will is there, we can act, and we can act boldly. Now, the problem is, because of the pandemic and all the things that we were just talking about, we ended up in an environment where inflation is running hotter than anybody wants to see it. And that then became an obstacle, right? Because here you had the Biden administration saying, we want this Build Back Better agenda. We want to make investments in early childhood education and college and healthcare and infrastructure and climate and all the rest of it, and wrap their arms around this pretty ambitious, right? At one point, it was $3.5 trillion they were talking about for Build Back Better. But it hit against, among other things, right, the inflation piece. But then you had a couple of senators, Senator Kyrsten Sinema and Senator Joe Manchin, who weren't prepared to go along and provide the votes.
And the entire GOP.
Yeah, well, that's right. But let's be clear, you weren't going to get those votes anyway. And What really stopped it was the inability of the Democratic Party to hold itself together and get those last 2 votes and get it across the finish line. So we don't have that, but it would have addressed the kinds of things that I talk about in the book. The second to the last chapter is called The Deficits That Matter. And it's all about these things in infrastructure and the care economy, and all of those kinds of things were in the Build Back Better package, but the votes weren't there to get it done.
Yeah. Are you optimistic? I know that you've worked with Democrats. You were working in the Senate Budget Committee. Are you optimistic that a new day is here? It seems to me that the neoliberal experiment has been exposed as a fraud, and we might be entering a new time here. We have about 30 seconds, Dr. Kelton.
Yeah, we've got to get through this inflation phase, and I do believe that all of the signs are there that indicate we don't have entrenched inflation. We're not going to have a wage price spiral of the kind of the 1970s. Supply chains are working themselves out, and I think as inflation comes down, that I hope will open up some possibilities for, lawmakers to return to the table and start thinking again strategically about where we need to go. Look what's happening in Florida. We got to act bigger on climate, Tom.
Are you concerned the Fed is overreached?
Oh, for sure. They've pushed this thing way too far, and they're not done, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So they're essentially committing to kneecapping the economy for the sake of bringing down inflation, which is already working itself out.
I get it. Professor Stephanie Kelton, the book, new out in paperback, The Deficit Myth, Modern Monetary Theory and the Birth of the People's Economy. Dr. Kelton, thanks again for dropping by.
For having me.
Great talking with you. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's 18 minutes past the hour. Yes, Donald Trump was more insane than you thought. Details on that in just a moment. And Alyssa Slotkin agreeing that the GOP is both brutal and violent. And welcome back. Glenn in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, says you disagree with me, Glenn, about what?
Well, you have it completely wrong in accepting Robert Reich's take on the billionaires.
Okay.
The point he misses is that the Internet created monopolies for Google and for Amazon that are really in a tax bracket, should be in a tax bracket of their own. But the bigger picture is that Elon Musk is not one of the billionaires from the Internet. Elon Musk created two companies, one that's putting our astronauts in space and no one else can, and the other one that's changing sustainable energy in America and in the world.
Right, and he created both those companies with massive government subsidies. In fact, when Tesla was on the verge of going bankrupt, he was bailed out by the federal government.
He would have succeeded anyhow, although slower. His companies, starting with PayPal.
Yeah, PayPal made a pile of money for him. There's no doubt about that.
And the idea of banking, being a bank, is still in his mind. He intends to make Twitter a banking portal, and he intends to bring universal basic income.
Oh, we'll see. I mean, I'm not an Elon Musk fanboy, but I'm certainly not, somebody who wants to sit around trashing him. I think he's done a lot of great stuff. I think he's been visionary in the world of business in many regards, and deserves credit for that.
You have to know Buckminster Fuller. You have to realize who that man was.
I don't think Elon Musk is any Bucky Fuller.
Oh yeah, Arthur C. Clarke called Buckminster Fuller an engineering saint.
Yeah, I would agree.
And that's what Elon Musk is, an engineering saint.
Well, what did he engineer? Electric cars are not a new thing.
Oh, if you don't engineering a factory, the biggest factory in the world is an engineering accomplishment, then you haven't looked at.
Well,
that's
a good point. That's a good point. Okay, all right. Thank you, Glenn. Rita in St. Charles, Illinois. Hey, Rita, what's up?
Hi, you had brought up the school issue in private schools and the privatization of schools. And there's one thing that's going on in Illinois, and I'm sure it's going on in other states. These small groups called, Moms for Liberty. They're trying to infiltrate all our school boards.
Yeah, this is one of the groups that's funded by the right-wing billionaires.
Oh, exactly. And they literally, in last weekend, had meetings in different venues and hotels to how to train people to gain access and join the school boards.
Right.
I'm watching in Barrington, Illinois right now, and they are just hateful and racist, and they are so much against control of. They want to control who these trans children, the gay children, special needs. They don't think they should be mainstreamed. Yeah. They think they should be segregated and separated. And there is big money behind these women. They claim to be some non-for-profit, and they gain their money by $50 membership and T-shirts. No, there has got to be bigger money behind these women.
Is.
And Bannon came out months ago. I never forgot that one speech he made or one blurb on the Internet that we're going to gain access to your school boards. So parents, if you're listening, and grandma and grandpas, keep an eye on the school board, because I've got 5 teachers in my family, so I'm on it all the time.
There you go. Rita, thank you.
They're trying to get in.
Spot on. They absolutely are. They're trying to destroy public education. Thank you. We'll be back. It's 22 minutes past the hour. And stick around. It's going to get interesting. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. This is This is a pretty amazing story here. Alyssa Slotkin talking about she being the representative. Actually, that's what I thought. She represents Michigan's 8th district. And this is about the Veterans Outreach Program. And just an amazing speech. Republicans, of course, are trying to insert anti-abortion provisions into funding for veterans in the United States. And here's what she had to say to her Republican colleague. By the way, this woman is a former CIA officer. She's no slouch. Here's what she had to say.
In terms of making decisions on behalf of women, if you want to take a veterans bill and make it about abortion, then let's do it. What you are saying, and you're saying in front of the American people, is that you believe a veteran who has been raped, who is the victim of incest, and who is having a dangerous miscarriage does not deserve access to abortion. You are saying, unless you correct me and tell me what you believe a woman deserves to have when she has been raped, the victim of incest, or is in the middle of a dangerous miscarriage, if you can't state it, then be clear you believe in no exceptions for women, a cold, heartless, violent approach to women's health. You want to ban all abortions. That is your goal. Many of you have been open about that. And if you flip the House, we know that you will put forward a full ban on all abortion for all states. You've been clear about it. You want to turn a veterans bill into an abortion bill, let's do it. Not one of you are a medical doctor. Not one of you. What the VA guidelines say is that if you've been raped or the victim of incest or a medical professional deems that your pregnancy is a risk to your health, the one of 4 women in this country who has had a miscarriage, probably many women in this room, that you are a better judge of who gets to decide the future of their life and not a medical doctor? Who do you think you are? You are politicians. We are all on this floor elected officials and not medical professionals. If it was your wife, your daughter, who was suffering through a miscarriage, are you going to tell her she can't until her fever gets high enough, until she's bleeding harder? That's what's happening in the state of Texas right now. If that's what you want for veterans, shame on you. Shame on you. I'm sorry. We built this bill to be bipartisan. I sought your support particularly, sir. And you're making it a political issue. Shame on you. You all have pictures of veterans in your office, proud to show your pride in our veterans. It should be the most bipartisan issue in the world, and you're making it political. Shame on you.
Amen. Amen. Alyssa Slotkin, representative, member of the House of Representatives from the state of Michigan, takes it home to the GOP. And this is really what they're all about. And they're trying to attach anti-abortion legislation. It's like the Dickey Amendment, right? They're trying to attach anti-abortion legislation to everything. Republicans have been doing this since the 70s, the late 70s, when the GOP decided to throw in with the Jerry Falwells of the world and the Franklin Grahams of the world and the other right-wing religious, pseudo-fascists. And here we are. Surprise, surprise. I got to tell you about the latest craziness attributed to Donald Trump. I'll tell you that story briefly on the other side of the break, and then I'll pick up your phone calls about all these issues of the day. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with your calls in just a moment. Well, here I am with my Free Speech TV swag. It is the Free Speech TV, freespeech.org hat, which, by the way, has the URL on it. So you're promoting Free Speech TV. I have my Free Speech TV notebook and pen right here. And it's really, this is a nice premium one, with one of these little bands that holds, you can see which page you're on and holds it there. And the Colsey, I forget what they're, Cool C is what they're called. Keep your cup cool. It says diversity on it, and it's got all these rainbow colors. And, of course, my Free Speech TV mug, all kinds of goodies. And the reason I mention these things is because we're still behind. It's a little worrying. There are 2 days left. And I have to tell you, I was one of the people, probably one of the more loud and outspoken people, as is my wont, who went to the management of Free Speech TV and said, we've got to stop doing 4-week-long fund drives. It's exhausting everybody, including me. But I think it's exhausting our donors as well. And let's just, bring them down to 2 weeks and ask people to respond quickly rather than dragging things out. And they listened and they did it. And this is a grand experiment, and we're behind. And maybe I was a dummy to suggest this. I don't know. But if you like 2-week fund drives instead of 4-week fund drives, call now, 877-378-8669, because like I said, we're behind. And we can't be behind. It's just, we got bills to pay and, electric lights that have to stay on and electrons that need to go to satellites and, all kinds of stuff like that. So in order to provide people with the truth, in order to provide people with good, honest, straightforward information about what's going on in the world, how do taxes work, how does the economy work, how what's up with big pharma, what's the latest outrage from big oil, what's going on in Congress, what are the Republicans up to, what are the Democrats, who's running for president, all these issues that in the corporate media are largely dealt with as sports. Who's up, who's down, or what scandal, or if it bleeds, it leads, right? Where's there a scandal? Obviously we'll talk about scandal and we'll talk about who's up and down here, but the larger picture is the important part from my point of view, and I think from Free Speech TV's point of view, and I know the other hosts that I know personally, I know that that's their perspective as well. That we have to truthfully and straightforward fashion be dealing with the issues of the day. And you can only do that when you're completely independent. And that's what my program is, and that's what Free Speech TV is. Nobody tells either one of us what to do, what to say, ever. And the upside of that is that you can trust the information you get. And on the rare occasions when I get something wrong, or other people on Free Speech TV get something wrong, people reach out and say, "Hey, you," and we fix it, we correct it. So you can, the trust is an important thing. Knowing that the information you're getting is really vitally important. So your contributions, 877-378-8669, your contribution given right now will be doubled up to $50,000 because of frontline funders Mike in San Francisco and Sandy in New Mexico. And if we can catch up today, because tomorrow's the last day, if we can catch up today, please call now. If we can catch up today, then there's an additional $10,000 that's going to go to Free Speech TV from frontline funders Bobby and Vivian in California, Delaney in Missouri, Brenda in Texas, Helen in Washington, John and Jean in Oregon, Joe in Washington, D.C., Charlene in Texas, Chuck in California, Thomas in Illinois, and Mark in Florida. So a big deal, but only if we hit our goal. So with a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the Free Speech TV Pride Coolsy. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the 5-pack of clear stickers or the Be a Superhero for Democracy tote bag. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the exclusive Thom Hartmann Free Speech TV mug, only available here. With a $100 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or Spread the Vote. You can help out voters in 19 states with a small portion of your gift going to Spread the Vote. With a $120 gift, there's my brand new book, an autographed copy of my brand new book, literally just out this week, The Hidden History of American Democracy, or the Free Speech TV Superhero Water Bottle. Actually came out last week, but you get the point. With $240 gift, our virtual meet and greet, and with a $1,000 gift, come here to Portland and hang out with us. And I realize that there's a long line for that, but hey, don't let that discourage you from making a $1,000 gift if you can afford to. Free Speech TV needs the money. And it's a big deal, and we are behind. Did I say we're behind? We're behind. So please, now is the perfect time to call. 877-378-8669. Make your contribution. make your voice heard, step up for democracy, step up for free speech in the United States through the Free Speech Television Network. It's such a great network. They're doing such a great job. We're out here working our butts off. I know that you appreciate the work we're doing, or you wouldn't be watching. So please, if you haven't pitched in already, do so now. 877-378-8669. Thank you. So much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Our phrase for the day is narcissistic collapse. This is what happens when a person like Donald Trump with severe narcissistic personality disorder can no longer maintain the facade of their own greatness. When the lies that they have used to build this facade begin to disintegrate, they either implode, typically through drugs or alcohol or other kind of semi-suicidal behavior, or even suicide itself. They typically either implode, or more frequently they explode. They start blaming everybody around them or whatever institutions they can to deny that the collapse is their own fault. They cannot accept the blame. It's part of their narcissistic personality disorder. And instead they go after the institutions or the people who are pointing out their failure. In the case of Donald Trump, going after the FBI, going after the courts. Look out. This is going to get really, really ugly. I've got a whole long video about it over at thomhartmann.com. Check it out. And welcome back. On the line with us is Matt Castelli. Matt is a former CIA officer focused on intelligence collection and counterterrorism operations, serving in Afghanistan and Iraq. The former director of counterterrorism at the National Security Council in the Obama administration. He also worked in the Trump administration. And he's running for Congress against Elise Stefanik, the number 3 Republican in Republican leadership, somebody who won her last race by a huge margin. As I recall, it was over 20 points. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is Castelli for Congress, by the way. CASTELLIFOR, Congress.com is the website. Castelli Matt on Twitter. Matt, tell us about taking on Elise Stefanik. I mean, a lot of people think this is a fool's errand, that you're tilting at windmills here.
Well, we actually have a tremendous opportunity to defeat Stefanik in this race because she's gone way out of step with the values of our community here in the 21st District. Thanks for the opportunity to join your program. Up here in Northern New York, this is a district that is home to the largest number of veterans, folks who swore an oath to the Constitution. This is a district that is pretty middle of the road, likes to come together to solve problems, not create more of them. And when they first elected Elise Stefanik many years ago, they thought they were getting a moderate. Her pivot towards the far right, towards ultra-MAGAism, is only a recent occurrence, and it's turned off a lot of voters here in the district. This is a district that elected Barack Obama twice. It elected Bill Owens, a former Democratic congressman here in the district, before he retired and gave the seat up, and Elise Stefanik was elected at that point. So there's a proud moderate tradition here in the district, and they look at Elise Stefanik's embrace of the far right, embrace of these extreme policies, and they're really turned off by it. So we're building a coalition of not just strong support from Democrats who are interested in sending her home and firing her in this election, but a lot of independents. It's a district that's home to 30% of registered voters are independents and unaffiliated. So you got to build a coalition here. And we've got a lot of Republicans who are supporting us in this campaign, not MAGA Republicans, but mega Republicans, the Make Elise Go Away Republicans. And so this coalition that we're building is pretty strong. And this is turning into one of the most important races in the country because of what we're about to achieve.
I think it's spectacular, Matt. It's why I wanted to have you on the program. This is David versus Goliath here. And
if you remember, David won that race.
Exactly, and I think you have a chance. I wish the Democratic Party would support you a little more aggressively. It's generally, conventional wisdom in politics is that it's not enough to run against, or to run a campaign based on my opponent's a crook. That you have to offer some kind of positive vision. What do you see as the major issues in this election where you and Stefanik differ, other than her love and adoration for Donald Trump and all things fascist?
Well, so here in the district, and some of that experience of hers may fall into this sort of narrative, which is true, is that Stefanik has sold us out. She's all about advancing her own career at the expense of not just our country. We saw that on January 6th, and we've seen it since then, but certainly our district. She's refused to make investments in the areas that we need. This is a district that is struggling. So many folks may be looking at the country being potentially on the wrong path or considering that. Our district is on the wrong path, and it's been on the wrong path for the last 8 years that Congresswoman Stefanik has been in office. She's refused to make investments in our future. And so many of the challenges that we see working families struggling with, the rising costs of daily life, things like childcare, affordable housing, healthcare and prescription drugs. Yes, certainly food and groceries and gas prices, but many of these issues have long been issues and challenges for working families, and we need a representative who's actually going to focus on solving them. So that's top of the list for us. Also, freedom. Listen, freedom's on the ballot this November, and Stefanik is right now leading this assault against certainly a woman's right to choose, to control her own body and make her own healthcare decisions. She's advocating, and is the highest ranking Republican, to advocate for a national ban on abortion. That's targeting blue states like New York, where we do have certain protections, but a national ban would threaten those protections. And so defending and protecting, particularly a woman's right to choose, is on the ballot and something we're going to fight for here as well. And our safety and security. And yes, that's going to be about funding law enforcement and securing our borders, but it's going to be about protecting and defending our democracy as well, because that's been under threat, certainly in the last couple of years, and Stefanik's been leading the charge.
As a former national security officer, can you speak to the kinds of damage that might have been done to our national security by the Trump administration during the time they were in? And also, I understand that for a while you worked under General Michael Flynn. What the hell happened to that guy?
Yeah, well, so I served as the director for counterterrorism at the National Security Council, first in the Obama administration, and then I was asked to stay on in that role doing strategy and policy work on the counterterrorism front during the Trump administration as well. And I did that for the first year of the Trump White House. And the first 3 weeks of the Trump administration was the extent of General Flynn's tenure as National Security Advisor. And then, as you may recall, he was fired. I believe he was fired for lying to the vice president then, Mike Pence, as well as some lies with respect to the FBI.
Yeah, about being on the take from a foreign government.
Yeah, most certainly there were some significant challenges there. And we've seen a lot of foreign influence in actors that found their way in and out of the former administration. And I think that that's really something that was a key challenge of the former administration. Certainly this America alone foreign policy, I think, was the greatest threat that we saw in a major shift. Some people called it America First. It really was about America alone, because it sought to remove the kind of support that we would provide to our allies and partners. Folks are looking right now and considering this war in Ukraine and Russia's assault on freedom and democracy there. And so much of that was an attempt to cash in on investments that Russia had made over the last decade or so, undermining not just our own democratic processes, but advancing efforts across Europe and Western Europe, and creating a sense of populism, nationalism, and getting people to stop believing in, well, we need to support each other in an international community. The America alone foreign policy sought to defund NATO. So when Putin invaded Ukraine, it was really an attempt to cash in on that investment that was made over the course of many years, certainly during the Trump administration as well. And my belief in the foreign policy that I believe in, and I think creates a greater degree of protection, is that while America is the strongest nation in the world, we're even stronger when we work with partners and allies. This false notion of one side versus the other, where you've got some that want to turn America into the world police, that's not acceptable. But withdrawing completely from the world is also not acceptable. Both of those things leave America less secure. And I think that's the challenge that we have, certainly stemming from the former Trump administration and their foreign policy approach.
We're talking with Matt Castelli, a former CIA officer who is now in the Obama administration and briefly in the Trump administration, who is now running for Congress in New York's 21st District for the U.S. House of Representatives against the number 3 Republican in America, or at least in Congress, Elise Stefanik. Castelli for Congress, CASTELLIFOR, Congress.com is the website. Castelli Matt is his Twitter handle. And Matt, how is this, well, I guess the essential question I wanted to ask you is, what kind of support are you getting from the DNC? I had read that the DNC basically figured, hey, Stefanik, you can't beat her. Why bother? That they haven't been supporting you that much. I don't know if that's an old story or if that's the case right now. Where are you at with regard to institutional support, as it were?
Well, as your listeners may understand, the institution is having a hard time, I think, defending a lot of territory across this nation. There are a lot of seats that are in jeopardy that maybe shouldn't have been. And so I think that's where much of their focus is, rather than being as aggressive as they should be in flipping some red to blue. And we certainly have an opportunity to do this here. This is one of the most important races in the country because Stefanik is vulnerable back here at home. And there's no person on the ballot this November that is more responsible for this ongoing threat to our democracy than Elise Stefanik. Your listeners may recall in the aftermath of January 6th, there was a moment where leaders in the Republican Party, in the Senate and in the House could have made a determination to distance themselves from this ultra MAGA movement that poses such a threat. And Elise Stefanik was really the architect in saying, no, we're going to embrace it. She stabbed Liz Cheney in the back. She took on that role as the number 3 in House Republican leadership, their conference chair.
She replaced Liz Cheney.
Exactly. She stabbed her in the back to replace her and took on the messaging role. So all of the messaging we're now seeing in advancing these draconian measures, these extreme policies around, attacking our freedoms, certainly even this pamphlet that they released last week, all of this is at the hands of Elise Stefanik. And here in our race, we have a tremendous opportunity to defeat her. And we're getting support. It's not coming from the institution, but it's coming from Democrats, not just in our district, but all across the country, because they understand the importance of this race and what November 9th represents when we defeat Stefanik, what kind of signal that's going to send, not just to the country, but even within the Republican Party. My mother's a lifelong Republican, and she looks at people like Elise Stefanik and says, that's not my Republican Party. And there are folks within the Republican Party right now who are suffering from a sense of political homelessness. We're creating a home in our campaign to bring people together rather than divide folks. So Democrats, independents, and those mega Republicans I talked about, they're coming together and showing what we can do as a nation to come together to reject this threat through our democracy and actually start solving some problems.
When you said the pamphlet they released last week, I'm assuming you're talking about Kevin McCarthy's little fluff piece, basically, on what the GOP wants to do?
Yeah, their commitment to America. Or
you want to speak to that? Any of the points in that you'd like to highlight?
Sure. I mean, Stefanik, I'd rather phrase it as a commitment to selling out. They released 4 points on the economy. Much of what they highlighted was copying and pasting what Democrats are already doing in Washington. It also, they want us to forget about the fact that they voted against every single common sense solution to reduce costs for working families and seniors, whether that's around childcare, affordable housing, prescription drugs. On safety and security, they want us to forget that it was their lies that led to this worst assault on law enforcement in our nation's history on January 6th that resulted in the deaths of 5 police officers and the injuries of over 140. On freedom, they want us to forget about this fact that they're right now attacking the freedoms of women, millions of them across the nation, and depriving them of the right to control their own bodies and make their own healthcare decisions. And on accountability, it seems like everyone else has to have accountability, but not the senior leaders of their party, to include those who are involved in directly, criminal actions, or even with respect to Stefanik. She's not accountable even to voters. She won't even show up and actually have town halls or communicate directly with voters. The press never have access to them. So this pamphlet was really just a sham and doesn't contain any details or opportunities to actually address the major needs that most Americans have, and certainly in our district, but I think across the nation.
Yeah. So if you like what you hear, Matt Castelli, former CIA officer, is running for Congress, the 21st District of New York, upstate New York, against Republican Elise Stefanik, number 3 in leadership in the House of Representatives. CastelliForCongress.com is the website, Castelli for FOR Congress.com. Castelli Matt, M-A-T-T, is his Twitter handle. Matt, thanks a lot for dropping by, and good luck.
Thanks, Tom. Great to be with you.
Back at you. We'll be back. I want to get into Trump's insanity, and we'll pick up your phone calls. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
47 minutes past the hour. Talk media for the rest of us. And welcome back. Maureen in Montrose, Colorado. Hey, Maureen, thank you for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I was wondering if I could get your help with what my response should have been in a situation I was in the other day. I had some Republican Congress people, Republican canvassers, come to my door on Saturday, and I am in Lauren Boebert's district.
Oy, oy, oy.
They
That's got to be a challenge.
They came to my door because I'm registered independent, and I explained to them that being registered as an independent voter gives me one of my only opportunities in this part of the state to cast a vote, even if it is a vote to vote against somebody, because a Democratic vote on the Western Slope usually doesn't go very far unless it's a presidential race. But I made a comment to one of these ladies about how I was frustrated with Lauren Boebert not understanding the difference, the Constitution as far as church and state being on different...
Being separate.
Stand. Yes. And I quoted Lauren Boebert's comment that the church should direct the government, which just that comment sent me over the wall.
Yeah, if you like 12th century Europe, you would love America under those circumstances.
Yeah. And this woman, very nicely dressed, her eyes got a little bit whiter, and she lowered her voice and said, when I repeated Lauren's comment about church directing state, she said, "Revelations are coming."
Oy.
And I was just, what should I have said to that comment? It's been, close to a week, and I'm still toasted about it. I don't know what to do or say, or how could someone make a comment like that when you're talking about the separation of church and state?
Well, clearly she believes that Revelation is coming, that these are the end days, that Jesus is going to return, that all the good people are going to go up into the sky, et cetera, et cetera.
Only 144,000 of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And them being that 144,000 all coming out of Jerusalem or out of Israel.
Yeah, so we're screwed, aren't we?
Right. I don't think that you're ever going to change the minds, or at least not in a conversation on your doorstep, of people like that. My response probably would have been, well, I get it that you believe that sect within Christianity, that bizarre sect, but I don't, and I don't think that they should be running our government.
Cult.
Yeah, it really is a death cult.
Absolutely.
And there's something to that effect, but it's a tough one, challenging somebody's faith. I'm not a big fan of it, but the idea that government and religion should be the same thing, that's very problematic. Maureen, thank you for the call. Good luck next time. Good luck with that one. We'll be right back. What's on your mind? Give us a shout. We'll be right back with your calls. Hey, I have a new book out. It's called The Hidden History of Neoliberalism, How Reaganism Gutted America and How to Restore Its Greatness. Greg Palast calls it a hand grenade of a book. You can pick it up wherever fine books are available. Tag you're it. And welcome back. 52 minutes past the hour. America doesn't understand crime. Inequality is causing crime. UK conservatives double down on inequality. This is an absolutely amazing story about what's going on in the United Kingdom. How they're trying to essentially replicate the Reagan Revolution. Ronald Reagan's theory was you break government, specifically over time, Medicare, Social Security, basically any kind of government program. You break the program, and then you stand around and you point at the broken program and you say, see, government can't do anything right. Look at that, it's broken. And then when you get enough people agreeing with you, well, that, yeah, it's not working the way it should, it takes I have to sit on hold for an hour when I call Social Security or whatever. Then you say, well, it's time to privatize it. Well, this is the strategy that Liz Truss has rolled out in the United Kingdom. But I really think, they're at the end of a 40-year experiment with neoliberalism too, and I don't think it's going to work there. Dr. Stefanik Kelton on the deficit myth. I'm curious your thoughts on what she had to say. Also, yes, Trump is more insane than anybody thought. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. Matt Castelli, we were just talking about. And, coming up in the next hour, the economic indicators say we're in a recession, and the GOP is basically punting on Trump's criminality. But this incredible story about Donald Trump. In 2019, you'll recall, Donald Trump went to Japan. And Bloomberg business investigative reporter Jason Leopold, who has been on this program in the past, by the way, he started out working in progressive media. He filed a FOIA request. Now, keep in mind, this was 3 years ago. He filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the White House Military Office's Office of Records for all the emails that have to do with that trip. Now, you may recall, during that trip, there was an aircraft carrier called the USS John McCain, and it was in port it wasn't Tokyo, it must have been whatever Japanese city Trump was at. And Trump's people reached out to the Navy and said, please move that aircraft carrier so the name USS John McCain does not show because it may trigger Donald Trump. In other words, our president is so unstable, so petty, so emotional, such a child that seeing John McCain's name will send him off on doing something that we think might be destructive to America. And he finally, Jason Leopold with the Bloomberg business finally got the emails. And sure enough, Navy officials wanted names of the individuals responsible for requesting the USS John McCain be moved out of view. They seemed stunned. All of the emails that he got, except one, and that was the one that talked about how they were stunned, has been classified ever since the Trump administration. They're still covering up for Trump. It's amazing. Lycan in Oakland, California, watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, Lycan, what's up? Am I saying your name right?
Oh, yeah, that's correct. What I wanted to bring up is that I feel that, okay, I'm going to use the term, duplicitous Democrats. Under President Obama, Arnie Duncan was huge behind the promotion of charter schools. He addressed the National Charter School Association 3 days before he left office how the Obama administration was giving $247 million to charter schools.
Obama never hid the fact that he was an advocate of neoliberalism.
Oh, and then where I live in Oakland, California, we have a huge closures of mostly serving black and brown communities of our public schools. And then they are replaced by charter schools. Now, there's something here in California called the FCMAT, and this is also Democrats, and they are fiscal management, and they say that the schools don't have enough enrollment, therefore they have to close the school.
Right, it's break them and then blame them.
So I just want to bring up that, a lot of times people want to blame Republicans for these problems with the charter schools when it's really pushed heavily. And right here in California, quite a few members of our school board at one point were pushing for the charter schools.
Right. I think the good news, Lycan, is that Democrats are waking up to what a scam this is. The bad news is that, that movie about Superman and all this other publicity that was promoted by the Gates Foundation and all these other big billionaire operations to essentially replace our public schools with charter schools. I think increasingly people are realizing that it's just a horrible, horrible failure that has gutted our public school system. Economic indicators say we're in a recession. Stick around. We'll talk about that, and I'll pick up your calls.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com. Well, here I am with my Free Speech TV swag. It is the Free Speech TV freespeech.org hat, which, by the way, has the URL on it. So you're promoting Free Speech TV. I have my Free Speech TV notebook and pen right here. And it's really, this is a nice premium one, you know, with one of these little bands that holds, you know, you can see which page you're on and holds it there. And the Colsey, I forget what they're, Cool C is what they're called. You know, keep your cup cool. It says diversity on it, and it's got all these rainbow colors. And of course, my Free Speech TV mug, all kinds of goodies. And the reason I mention these things is because we're still behind. It's a little worrying. There are 2 days left. And I have to tell you, I was one of the people, probably one of the more loud and outspoken people, as is my want, who went to the management of Free Speech TV and said, we've got to stop doing 4-week-long fund drives. It's exhausting everybody, including me. But I think it's exhausting our donors as well. And let's just, you know, bring them down to 2 weeks and ask people to respond quickly rather than dragging things out. And they listened and they did it. And this is a grand experiment, and we're behind. And maybe I was a dummy to suggest this. I don't know. But if you like 2-week fund drives instead of 4-week fund drives, call now, 877-378-8669, because like I said, we're behind. And we can't be behind. It's just, you know, we got bills to pay and, you know, electric lights that have to stay on and electrons that need to go to satellites and, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. So in order to provide people with the truth, in order to provide people with good, honest, straightforward information about what's going on in the world, how do taxes work, how does the economy work, how you know, what's up with, you know, big pharma, what's the latest outrage from big oil, you know, what's going on in Congress, what are the Republicans up to, what are the Democrats, who's running for president, all these issues that, you know, in the corporate media are largely dealt with as sports. Who's up, who's down, you know, or what scandal, you know, or if it bleeds, it leads, right? Where's there a scandal? You know, obviously we'll talk about scandal and we'll talk about who's up and down here, but the larger picture is the important part from my point of view, and I think from Free Speech TV's point of view, and I know the other hosts that I know personally, I know that that's their perspective as well. That we have to truthfully and you know, straightforward fashion be dealing with the issues of the day. And you can only do that when you're completely independent. And that's what my program is, and that's what Free Speech TV is. Nobody tells either one of us what to do, what to say, ever. And you know, the upside of that is that you can trust the information you get. And on the rare occasions when I get something wrong or other people on Free Speech TV get something wrong, you know, people reach out and say, hey, you, and we fix it. We correct it. So you can, you know, the trust is an important thing. Knowing that the information you're getting is really vitally important. So your contributions, 877-378-8669, your contribution given right now will be doubled up to $50,000 because of frontline funders Mike in San Francisco and Sandy in New Mexico. And if we can catch up today, because tomorrow's the last day, if we can catch up today, please call now, If we can catch up today, then there's an additional $10,000 that's going to go to Free Speech TV from frontline funders Bobby and Vivian in California, Delaney in Missouri, Brenda in Texas, Helen in Washington, John and Jean in Oregon, Joe in Washington, D.C., Charlene in Texas, Chuck in California, Thomas in Illinois, and Mark in Florida. So a big deal, but only if we hit our goal. So with a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the Free Speech TV Pride Coolsey. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the 5-pack of clear stickers or the Be a Superhero for Democracy tote bag. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the exclusive Thom Hartmann Free Speech TV mug, only available here. With a $100 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or Spread the Vote. You can help out voters in 19 states with a small portion of your gift going to Spread the Vote. With a $120 gift, there's my brand new book, an autographed copy of my brand new book, literally just out this week, The Hidden History of American Democracy, or the Free Speech TV Superhero Water Bottle. Actually came out last week, but you get the point. With $240 gift, our virtual meet and greet, and with a $1,000 gift, come here to Portland and hang out with us. And I realize that there's a long line for that, but hey, don't let that discourage you from making a $1,000 gift if you can afford to. Free Speech TV needs the money. And it's a big deal, and we are behind. Did I say we're behind? We're behind. So please, now is the perfect time to call. 877-378-8669. Make your contribution. Make your voice heard. Step up for democracy. Step up for free speech in the United States through the Free Speech Television Network. It's such a great network. They're doing such a great job. We're out here working our butts off. I know that you appreciate the work we're doing, or you wouldn't be watching. So please, if you haven't pitched in already, do so now. 877-378-8669. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back to the third hour of our program. We've covered an awful lot today. America doesn't understand crime, the basis of how inequality produces the destruction of trust in a society, which then leads to crime. From our first hour, also how UK conservatives are doubling down on inequality. Dr. Stefanik Kelton dropped by in the second hour of our program to talk about the deficit myth, and I know some of you want to talk about that. How, using the metaphor of a family to describe a government is just nuts. Doesn't make any sense at all. Families can't produce their own currency. They don't own their own currency, etc. Alyssa Slotkin, we played a clip of her the Republicans are trying to insert an absolute ban on abortions into a Veterans Administration bill. And she called them out. That was pretty amazing. In the last half hour, Matt Castelli dropped by, the former CIA officer who's running against Elise Stefanik and a different ES. And Stefanik being the number 3 the number 3 Republican in the U.S. House, who basically stabbed Liz Cheney in the back politically and then took her place. Matt Castelli thinks he can beat her. And that's going to be an interesting race. But I wanted to get into this issue of the economy as well. The Bureau of Economic Analysis, this is has just come out with this analysis of the the second quarter 2022. And now this is the first quarter, January, February, March, and the second quarter, March through June. So we don't have, July and August as numbers yet. We're in the third quarter right now. But the first quarter, we actually saw a decline in GDP. It was a small decline. It was 0.6%. It was 1.6% the first quarter. The second quarter, we saw a 0.6%. So the economy is struggling to break into positive territory. But 2 consecutive quarters of GDP decline is the technical definition of a recession. Now, you're not hearing, much talk about, yes, we're in a recession right now, because typically that kind of talk is led from the top down. The president would come out and say it. And the last thing that Democrats want to say right now is that, while they're running the country has slid into a recession. But they're not running the Fed. It's a lifelong Republican bankster, a professional Wall Street bankster by the name of Jerome Powell, who is running the Fed. He was a Trump appointee because he would be a loyal Republican. And I am convinced that Jay Powell is doing everything he can to provoke a serious recession before the election. Now, I realize that saying that the Fed has been politicized is blasphemous. It's just as blasphemous as, 2 decades ago saying that the Supreme Court has been politicized. But, hey, it turns out the Supreme Court is politicized, was politicized, and so has been the Fed. So, surprise, surprise. In the last quarter, the second quarter, we saw corporate profits rise 4.6%, even as GDP declined, which means that corporations have figured out some way to increase their profits. What might that be? Could it be price gouging? See, in the UK, as much as, they're now infected with complete craziness, Liz Truss just dropping the top tax rate for the morbidly rich in the United Kingdom, they still looked at the situation and said, yeah, our inflation is caused by by a number of big corporations, particularly in the fossil fuel industry, but also other corporations. Just, they've achieved basically monopoly status as the result of Margaret Thatcher doing the same thing Ronald Reagan did, was stopping the enforcement of the antitrust laws in the UK. And the result of that is that they're price gouging. Their prices are no longer restrained by competition because they have no competition. Their prices are now, even where there's multiple companies in the same space, like air travel, for example, or cell phones. And I can't speak to cell phones in the United Kingdom. It's certainly the case in the United States. These are cartels, essentially. What are referred to as oligopolies, which is just, a monopoly that's 4 or 5 companies instead of just one company. And, if one company changes their prices, all the other companies change their prices instantly. We see this in air travel in the United States. So private goods producing industries actually decreased economic activity 10.4% in the third quarter, although profits went up 4.6%. I think that you can attribute almost all of that to price gouging. And what do they do in the UK to deal with this? And increasingly across Europe, they're talking about this. They put a windfall profits tax in place, something we haven't seen since the era of Jerry Ford and Jimmy Carter. And the windfall profits tax says basically, you want to screw consumers? You're just going to have to give that money to the government. Might as well not do it. And sure enough, the companies start backing off. But here in the United States, anything with the word tax associated with it not only causes the entire Republican Party to start coughing and sneezing loudly, but it does, a small number of corporate-owned Democrats, which is tragic. And I realize, the good news is that type of Democrat, the so-called moderate Democrats, I would call them corporate Democrats, their numbers are diminishing day by day in the Democratic Party as more and more Democrats are stepping up and saying, yes, I'm an FDR Democrat, I'm an LBJ Democrat, I'm a progressive Democrat, I want to strengthen Medicare, I want to strengthen Medicaid, I want to strengthen Social Security. We should be enforcing the laws against corporate monopolies. We should be protecting average working people. We should strengthen the rights of unions. We should be protecting the environment. We need to make sure that everybody in America has health care as a right, not just as a privilege. We need the right of working people to unionize and to defend themselves in the workplace against corporate malfeasance and monopolies. We've got to protect our environment. We've got to do something about our nation being awash in gun violence. We have 120 guns for every 100 people in this country. The average for most of the developed countries around the world is between 1 in Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan, and 20 in most of your European countries per 100 people. But here it's 120 guns per 100 people. And we wonder why the leading cause of death among children in America now is gun violence. So number one, I wanted to lay that on the table. The number two story I wanted to share with you, and then I'll pick up your phone calls, is this bizarre goings-on at the Federal Election Commission. This gets almost no reporting, and I think it's a big deal. The Federal Election Commission has 6 commissioners, 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats. And the 3 Republicans on the commission have, ever since Donald Trump became president, have blocked every single, to the best of my knowledge, every single effort to investigate Republicans. And there have been no shortage of actual crimes against the United States in violation of our campaign contribution laws being committed by Republicans, by nonprofit organizations associated with the GOP, by religious organizations associated with the GOP, by Republican candidates, by the Republican Party itself. The latest and most disgusting example that we just saw, this was this week. You'll recall back 3-4 years ago, remember Cindy Yang, Li Yang? She was this front person for Chinese billionaires who was hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, had insinuated herself into Donald Trump's inner circle. He's tough on China, you know. Yes. Just wants to make sure his daughter has her patents, although she seems to have lost all her interest in all those patents that Donald actually stabbed the Hong Kong protesters in the back. Donald Trump, you may have, you may be forgiven if you've forgotten. But back in 2018 or 2019, Donald Trump was on a phone call with President Xi, and it was the time that the umbrella protests, where the people are pouring into the streets in Hong Kong to demand democracy, a continuation of democracy, and President Xi was going to go in with guns and start killing people and arresting people. And he got on a phone call with Donald Trump and said, "What are you going to do about this if I do this?" And Trump said, "No problem. Make sure my daughter gets her patents, and you are good to go. Kill as many people as you want, throw as many people in prison as you want." And that's just exactly what President Xi did. Well, around that time, there was this woman, Ellen Yang, who was hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, and she was funneling money from Chinese billionaires and the Chinese Communist Party into the Trump campaign, into specifically a super PAC that was associated with the Trump campaign. And for 3 years now, this Common Cause and the Campaign Legal Center have been basically filing a suit against Cindy Yang and against the Trump people for taking money from China illegally. It's against multiple laws that are supposed to be enforced by the Federal Election Commission. So they put this before the Federal Election Commission, and the lawyers for the Federal Election Commission who did an investigation of this, this was an 18-month investigation. They dug into this, and the general counsel, they issued a 33-page report back in June, 3 months ago, saying that, yes, she violated campaign contribution laws. The Chinese violated, and foreign money was propping up Donald Trump and the Republicans right across the board. So it goes before the FEC, where this super PAC should be charged with a crime. They should at the very least have to give the money back. But the 3 Republicans on the Federal Election Commission, because it takes 4 votes for them to do anything, and there's only 6 members, and it's split 3-3, the 3 Republicans blocked this. The headline on MSN.com, Republicans block probe of contributions by Chinese elites to Trump PAC through spa operator. She also, by the way, she was the woman who owned this chain of Asian massage parlors that went up into from Florida up into Georgia and whatnot. And there was that member of Congress who, let's see, Robert Kraft. No, I'm sorry, he wasn't a member of Congress. He was the owner of the New England Patriots, who got busted for apparently hooking up with one of the women in one of these spas. Those charges against him were ultimately dropped, and Yang has never been charged. But this raised a lot of eyebrows, shall we say. So what's going on with this? Anyhow, I just wanted to fill you in on that. That's kind of a summary of where we've been at for the last 2.5 hours, or 2.25 hours. I will pick up your phone calls on the other side of this break. It's 18 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, speaking the truths the multinational corporations and the GOP would really rather you didn't know.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We are the anti-Fox News. We'll be back with your calls right after this. And welcome back. Jim in West Allis, Wisconsin. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Hey, I was wondering, you kind of touched on this briefly several weeks ago. Seems like the Republicans are so cocky and confident about the election on so many unpopular issues, like they know the fix is in no matter what stupid thing they see.
They believe it, Jim. And frankly, I mean, down in Georgia, for example, part of the election reforms that Brian Kemp passed give any one individual the ability to challenge the votes of an unlimited number of Democrats. And all of those Democrats, if their vote is challenged, then have to go to the local elections office and prove that they're eligible to vote. In many cases, they don't even know they have to do this. So they're going to show up to vote on election day and be told, sorry, you can't vote. You never showed up. And, Greg Palast has got a movie coming out in a couple of weeks that I played a very small role in helping him put together. And in that movie, he's documenting how just one woman, one Republican activist, challenged over 30,000 Democratic voters, almost all of them black, in Georgia. And, those people, in all probability, will not have their votes counted. So, yeah, Republicans know what's going on. They know that, while voter fraud doesn't exist, election fraud is big business, and the GOP is totally down with it.
Well, it seems that the fraud is there, but it's on the GOP, Trump, whatever you call them, Republicans. It seems it's on their side. And even the left-leaning news isn't hitting on this. It's so obvious. Is this all just a dog and pony show, and the futures?
No, the elections are real, and I think that some Democrats don't want to talk about this because they don't want to dishearten, or they don't want to cause people to throw their hands up and say, "Why bother voting?" But there are some Democrats who are pointing it out. Stacey Abrams among them, for example. I mean, she lost the last gubernatorial race in Georgia by 50,000 votes right after Brian Kemp purged over 100,000 African Americans from the voting rolls in the months before the election. So which is why she, to this day, refuses to acknowledge that he won the election. And I think she's probably the only Democrat in the country who's taking that position. Jim, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Dave in Venice, California. Hey, Dave, thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Hi, Tom. Just felt like I wanted to follow up on Maureen and talk about her situation because so many of us face it all the time.
Where she had the Republican canvasser come to her door and say the revelations, the end days are here?
Yeah, start quoting the Bible, because the truth is, Tom, I think we on the left, we really should understand deeply that we're not just addressing politics. We're addressing a religious movement that, started when they started doing away with dismissing the social gospel back in the 50s and the 60s.
Well, the thing that really jump-started this, David, it was the Brown versus Board of Education ruling that you must integrate schools. And suddenly, a lot of people got religion, literally.
And especially a religion that coddled to their racism, which was very much the right-wing evangelical Billy Graham born-again thing.
Yep.
And so I agree that there's a subconscious current of racism.
Yeah, I'm with you, David.
There's also a subconscious current of religious illiteracy.
Well,
and we on the left,
you're absolutely right. And religious dominionism, this belief that and the white supremacist part of the white evangelical movement is very real too. David, thank you for the call. 22 minutes past the hour. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Welcome back, 23 minutes past the hour. Lewis in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Hey, Lewis, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk to you about, I think there's a simple thing about the election deniers, the mega election deniers, in that how they're trying to, they're saying we need to start a revolution. There's all this fraud, and we know all this stuff. I'm just trying to simplistically say, why don't we have an ad that says, why don't you want to be American? Because, America believes in the rule of law and the justice system. There were 62 cases. There was due process, but they want to start a revolution. And so we followed the American system. So we say, oh, that was BS and all this stuff. Then you don't believe in America, because that's how it works. It goes through the court system. And you live with the decision, just like we did with the Gore-Bush situation.
Right.
You follow me?
I do.
So, yeah, I think like making it that simple. And then when they say, well, they don't report it or they don't, well, that's why you have a court case.
Mm-hmm.
That you bring all your evidence to the courts, and then there's a jury or whatever. I don't know, however it is, but then it gets, you litigate it, and then that's rule of law. That's how it works. So by you saying that you don't believe, that 60% of you say Republicans say you don't believe in the election, you don't believe in America, do you? I mean, how is that believing in America?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Thomas Paine called elections the beating heart of democracy and said if you take a man's vote away from him, you reduce him to slavery. And there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, not literally slavery, but it is. I think it's a great analysis and a great metaphor, and I agree with you, Lewis. And I think you're absolutely right. The response to these guys is,
whenever they
you
bring
don't
up
believe in the American system, huh?
Yeah, and whenever they bring up there's corruption in this, corruption in that, and there's no evidence of it, that's also being un-American.
Yeah.
If you're accusing people of stuff, of a crime, of corruption, or whatever the crime is, then you have to bring it to court. You have to bring your evidence. They have no evidence, obviously, and you bring it to court. You don't just say everything. The other side's exactly the same, whatever. No, we have evidence. The guy who was president says it all the time. He admits it. Here's the final one I want to say. When the president got on the phone with Zelensky and committed bribery, it says it in the Constitution. Why shouldn't he be impeached for that? When he said it clear cut, he committed bribery. And why didn't they say it was bribery?
Well, he was impeached for that. He just wasn't convicted. And he wasn't convicted because the Republican Party is a bunch of sellouts.
They don't believe in America.
Well, I think
don't believe in America.
That's a great way of saying it, Lewis. That is really and truly a great way of saying it. And I think spot on. I think you've nailed it.
The Lincoln Project. Do this ad right now, Lincoln Project. Listen to Lou from Cherry Hill.
Yeah. Well, Lou from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I think you put your finger on something that's really important, and that the Democratic Party has, failed to really pursue, which is this idea of what does it mean to be an American? Do we believe in the rule of law? Are there people who are above the law? I mean, you've got Republicans right now who are squealing like stuck pigs because they just appropriated money to allow the Internal Revenue Service to actually, again, resume, after 20 years, auditing the tax returns of billionaires. I mean, it's been decades since billionaires have been audited because they're so complex and so expensive. And George W. Bush cut the budget to the IRS. Donald Trump cut it even farther, laid off another 10,000 people or thousands of people. What's American about that? Saying, oh yeah, it's terrible that they're going to audit billionaires. Come on, Lewis. Thank you for the call, and we'll be right back with more of your calls on the other side of the break. Here, it's 27 minutes past the hour on the Thom Hartmann Program. Your media support group for We the People.
To the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
You're listening to the place where smart people get their news, and we will be right back in just a few moments. Well, here I am with my Free Speech TV swag. It is the Free Speech TV freespeech.org hat, which, by the way, has the URL on it. So you're promoting Free Speech TV. I have my Free Speech TV notebook and pen right here. And it's this is a nice premium one, with one of these little bands that holds, you can see which page you're on and holds it there. And the Colsey? I forget what they're. Cool-C is what they're called. Keep your cup cool. It says diversity on it, and it's got all these rainbow colors. And of course, my Free Speech TV mug, all kinds of goodies. And the reason I mention these things is because we're still behind. It's a little worrying. There are 2 days left, and I have to tell you, I was one of the people, probably one of the more loud and outspoken people, as is my wont, who went to the management of Free Speech TV and said, we've got to stop doing 4-week-long fund drives. It's exhausting everybody, including me. But I think it's exhausting our donors as well. And let's just, bring them down to 2 weeks and ask people to respond quickly rather than dragging things out. And they listened and they did it. And this is a grand experiment, and we're behind. And maybe I was a dummy to suggest this. I don't know. But if you like 2-week fund drives instead of 4-week fund drives, call now, 877-378-8669, because like I said, we're behind. And we can't be behind. It's just, we got bills to pay and, electric lights that have to stay on and electrons that need to go to satellites and, all kinds of stuff like that. So in order to provide people with the truth, in order to provide people with good, honest, straightforward information about what's going on in the world, how do taxes work, how does the economy work, how what's up with big pharma, what's the latest outrage from big oil, what's going on in Congress, what are the Republicans up to, what are the Democrats, who's running for president, all these issues that in the corporate media are largely dealt with as sports. Who's up, who's down, or what scandal, or if it bleeds, it leads, right? Where's there a scandal? Obviously we'll talk about scandal and we'll talk about who's up and down here, but the larger picture is the important part from my point of view, and I think from Free Speech TV's point of view, and I know the other hosts that I know personally, I know that that's their perspective as well. That we have to truthfully and straightforward fashion be dealing with the issues of the day. And you can only do that when you're completely independent. And that's what my program is, and that's what Free Speech TV is. Nobody tells either one of us what to do, what to say, ever. And the upside of that is that you can trust the information you get. And on the rare occasions when I get something wrong, or other people on Free Speech TV get something wrong, people reach out and say, "Hey, you," and we fix it, we correct it. So you can, the trust is an important thing. Knowing that the information you're getting is really vitally important. So your contributions, 877-378-8669, your contribution given right now will be doubled up to $50,000 because of frontline funders Mike in San Francisco and Sandy in New Mexico. And if we can catch up today, because tomorrow's the last day, if we can catch up today, please call now. If we can catch up today, then there's an additional $10,000 that's going to go to Free Speech TV from frontline funders Bobby and Vivian in California, Delaney in Missouri, Brenda in Texas, Helen in Washington, John and Jean in Oregon, Joe in Washington, D.C., Charlene in Texas, Chuck in California, Thomas in Illinois, and Mark in Florida. So a big deal, but only if we hit our goal. So with a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the Free Speech TV Pride Coolsey. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the 5-pack of clear stickers or the Be a Superhero for Democracy tote bag. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the exclusive Thom Hartmann Free Speech TV mug, only available here. With a $100 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or Spread the Vote. You can help out voters in 19 states with a small portion of your gift going to Spread the Vote. With a $120 gift, there's my brand new book, an autographed copy of my brand new book, literally just out this week, The Hidden History of American Democracy, or the Free Speech TV Superhero Water Bottle. Actually came out last week, but you get the point. With $240 gift, our virtual meet and greet, and with a $1,000 gift, come here to Portland and hang out with us. And I realize that there's a long line for that, but hey, don't let that discourage you from making a $1,000 gift if you can afford to. Free Speech TV needs the money. And it's a big deal, and we are behind. Did I say we're behind? We're behind. So please, now is the perfect time to call. 877-378-8669. Make your contribution. Make your voice heard. Step up for democracy. Step up for free speech in the United States through the Free Speech Television Network. It's such a great network. They're doing such a great job. We're out here working our butts off. I know that you appreciate the work we're doing or you wouldn't be watching. So please, if you haven't pitched in already, do so now. 877-378-8669. Thank you. Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour, picking up your phone calls. Marie in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Marie, what's on your mind today?
Hey there, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. You were talking earlier about the quote-unquote Reagan Revolution, which was to begin to strip away resources from the government so that it would be unable to function, and then they can point to, see, we told you it couldn't function, and that becomes the excuse for privatizing. In a related note with regard to the hurricane, I want to point something out because I have a feeling this thing is going to get legs and I want to stop it as soon as possible. Ron DeSantis made a comment last night on, I think it was Tucker Carlson. I confess I don't watch that mess. But what he said was that he had spoken with the president and that he had made a request for reimbursement at 100% for 60 days. Now, here's why that's a line of crap. Because FEMA publication 321, again, that's FEMA publication 321, it is not written for lawyers, it's written for emergency responders and governments in an emergency situation. That document details how reimbursement is obtained. And number one, you can't say to somebody, hey, I've got this horrible thing happening, and you're going to reimburse me at 100%. Well, wait a minute. You haven't turned in a receipt yet. I don't know what you're going to bill me for.
Right.
The other thing about that to keep in mind is they distinguish between permanent work, which is like really rebuilding, versus disaster response. So that might be removing the trees that have fallen, removing debris in the roadway, those kinds of things that make it possible to respond to the emergency. It is the disaster response costs that have a lighter footprint in terms of bidding requirements. The government doesn't have to go out and bid to spend public money as not quite as formally.
Right, I get
it's
it.
a much less formal process when you're dealing with disaster response, because obviously nobody's going to wait, 15,
And there's
20,
a crisis.
whatever days.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's so that government can be responsive, but again, is one of those things that you can't in advance say, I'm going to need 100%,
Right.
and I'm asking you to commit. And he said in his comments, we haven't gotten a response back yet. Right. Well, yeah, you haven't turned in a receipt yet. So
that may have something to do with it. Here's another data point with regard to DeSantis and disaster relief. You'll recall in June of 2013, this was right after Superstorm Sandy wiped out large chunks of New Jersey, a blue state. There was a piece of legislation to appropriate money, $9.7 billion specifically, for victims of Hurricane Sandy. And Ron DeSantis was a member of the House of Representatives at that time, representing his district in Florida, and he voted no. So he voted against hurricane relief for New Jersey. But now he's ragging on Biden that he thinks he may not get enough. And of course, he asked for hurricane relief, and Biden said, sure, no problem. Whatever you want, we're going to be here for you. But, DeSantis has got to play politics with everything. He's running for president right now. That's the only thing he cares about, frankly. I mean, he's running for re-election, too, but I think he thinks that he's going to walk all over Charlie Crist, and there's a good chance he will. Although I still encourage people in Florida to please get out and vote. But, destroying a chunk of Florida, might actually work to DeSantis' benefit, too. Maria, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. Jim in Gilbert, Arizona. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how are you? I, like you, am a transplanted Michiganian, but out here, you were talking the other day about Arizona's draconian abortion Civil War era law that is actually the law of the state. But I want to give you some good news.
Go for it.
About 3-4 weeks ago, a group started Save Our Schools because the state of Arizona, the legislature passed a $1 billion, that's billion with a B, takeaway from public schools, giving it to charter schools, $1 billion.
Yeah, which is about 10% of your entire school budget in Arizona, if I'm remembering correctly. And for people who don't know, Jim, there's a backstory to this. In 2018, as privatization of schools was really picking up steam in Arizona, a bunch of concerned citizens got a ballot initiative saying no more state money for private schools and no more expansion of this stuff and private, particularly for religious schools, but all of these kinds of schools. It passed overwhelmingly. It was like 2/3. In fact, a reporter for the Arizona, what is it, the Sun Times or what? No, that's the Florida paper. I'm forgetting.
Republic.
Yeah, the Arizona Republic. Thank you. Said not only did voters, defeat the measure, they backed up the bus and ran over it again. So in 2020, the Republican-controlled legislature passes this bill that does the exact opposite of what people had just voted for.
Well, you're getting ahead of me. So I'm part of this group called Save Our Schools. Within about less than 3 weeks, we gathered 167,000 signatures. Whoa. And that $1 billion giveaway is on permanent hold because now it will go to the ballot.
That's great. That's great. Where it'll presumably get defeated again. Well, Jim, thank you for the good news. Thank you for the good news.
That's what I thought. All right, Tom.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks for listening to us there in Gilbert, Arizona. Mary in Evanston, Illinois. Hey, Mary, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, I'm calling. I'm a CPS teacher, and I'm
What's
calling
CPS?
because Chicago Public Schools.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
And Chicago Public Schools is rated as having some of the best schools in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I can guarantee everybody's not happy, it really does have good schools.
Yeah.
And the charter school is a minority, and it will stay a minority. And speaking to your previous caller, I was thinking of moving to Arizona due to a relative situation. And when I went to find out what I would be paid in Arizona, I would be paid a fraction of what I'm being paid in Chicago Public Schools.
Right.
And that is true in almost every GOP state, which is why they have teachers. Everybody has a large amount of subs because COVID, a lot of teachers quit.
Yeah.
But in Florida, if what I heard is correct, they're actually making substitutes of anybody whose armed services spouse is in the armed service.
Yeah.
Now,
There's all kinds of weird waivers flying around. So, Mary, I have a theory about this that you might think is a conspiracy theory, but let me lay it on you and get your thoughts on it. And that is that the Republican Party doesn't work against public schools just because they're government-run or just because most of the teachers in public schools are unionized, although those are two things that, the Republican Party hates. They hate American government. And, they'd be much happier with a Soviet-style system or a Russian-style system. Not Soviet, but, the Putin-style system. And basically, they hate unions. But I think it goes beyond that. I think that the GOP realizes that when people are well-educated and, genuinely competently literate and are therefore paying attention to what's going on in the world, and are capable of critical thought, critical thinking skills, accurately and reasonably evaluating issues and statements that are made by political figures and whatnot, that those educated people, even if it's just a good high school education, tend more frequently to end up voting for Democrats than for Republicans, and that they have the best traction among, Donald Trump said, "I love the poorly educated." And you look at the voting patterns and you see this. I mean, people talk about wealthy white people skew Republican, and that's true. But if you look at educational status, what you find is that the majority of people with college degrees, and certainly postgraduate degrees, are overwhelmingly Democratic. So that, in my mind, is one more reason why Republicans hate public schools. What say you?
Well, I mean, if you look at it anywhere in the United States, if you look at Kentucky, if you look at Missouri, you will see that they are rated very poor in education, and they have governors and mayors who could care less about what happens to the population. And they keep getting voted in year after year because their educational system is so poor, and they actually believe what the GOP is telling them.
Right, because I think that's because they lack critical thinking skills. Excuse
well,
me.
yes, here in Illinois, we have something very interesting going on. We have someone who's running for governor who is saying that beware, because the taxes they're coming after your money. They've increased the tax, people who collect taxes, but of course they don't mention that they've been increased in order to go after the big money people.
Right.
So, I mean, the GOP is playing it all over the place in Illinois, but I'm hoping that that we here in Illinois, we also, whether you like it or not, we allow abortion. And that's not going to change.
Yeah. Unless the Republicans can push through one of the several pieces of legislation sitting in the House and the Senate right now that would ban all abortions nationwide, and they're working on that.
I don't think they can.
I don't think they can either, Mary, right now, but they can if they take back the House, the Senate, and the White House in 2024.
Yes, but what do you...
I got to run, I'm sorry.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's 45 minutes past the hour. Back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where despair is not an option. So, your definitive guide to the lawsuits, criminal and civil cases against Donald Trump. This is absolutely fascinating. This was published over at the Banter, Ben Cohen's website, not the ice cream Ben Cohen, the progressive with a British accent Ben Cohen, and I think the Banter.com, as I recall. Oh no, it's the Banter Substack. Anyway, you can easily find it. So number one, he's got the espionage, this federal grand jury looking into Donald Trump's involvement in espionage, in selling secrets from the United States to Russia or giving them to Russia or Saudi Arabia. Number two, you got the January 6th grand jury investigation, both federal and criminal. You've got the Trump Organization tax fraud investigation, number three. Number four, you got the Trump Organization tax fraud investigation, civil. You've got number five, the Fulton County, Georgia election fraud investigation. Number six, you've got the January 6th committee looking into him. And number seven, you've got the Senate investigation. On top of that, there's lawsuits against Trump. Trump and his children are being sued by a group of investors for a pyramid marketing scheme. Mary Trump is suing Donald Trump and her cousins. In four separate cases, 10 Capitol police officers are suing Trump over the insurrection. No fewer than 11 members of the House are suing Trump for sparking the insurrection. The NAACP is suing Trump for his frantic attempt to commit election fraud. Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, is suing Trump in relation to his prison sentence. And E. Jean Carroll's defamation suit and rape suit are continuing. Alexander Vindman is suing Trump. A group of activists are suing Trump for being assaulted outside Trump Tower. And Carl Racine, the D.C. Attorney General, has launched a criminal probe into Trump's insurrection. It's amazing. Karen in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Hey, Karen, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Got a question for you. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have the legal expertise for it, but you're a better person than I am.
Caveat, I'm not a lawyer.
Right. All this anti-abortion, I should say the abortion ban, brought to us by SCOTUS and our Congress. I always thought that in order to be make those kind of decisions, you had to be a board-certified OBGYN. So my question to you is, are they practicing medicine without a license? Just like if I put a shingle out on my door and said, oh, I'm an OBGYN. Yeah, I'll give you my opinion.
Right. I think as Alyssa Slotkin pointed out on our program earlier, or the clip that we played on our program earlier.
I saw that.
Yeah, morally speaking, these Republicans absolutely are practicing medicine without a license. However, the law is fairly clear that Congress can establish the rules for regulation of, individual professions, and they can define the parameters of what can be done within those professions. So, it's like Congress has made it harder for pain medication, for example. Go ahead.
So we can make medical decisions on our own. We don't have to bother going to medical school then.
If you get elected to Congress, yes. That's the bottom line.
That is sad.
It really is. But on the other hand, I don't think you'd want it any other way. I mean, you want somebody that is answerable to the people to be making these large decisions. And I think, frankly, this is not going to stand. My prediction is that within 4 or 5 years, you're going to see maybe a small handful of all former Confederate states will be the only places where abortion's illegal. Hey, I have a new book out. It's called The Hidden History of Neoliberalism, How Reaganism Gutted America and How to Restore Its Greatness. Greg Palast calls it a hand grenade of a book. You can pick it up wherever fine books are available. Tag you're it. Are you feeling sad and depressed? Are you anxious, worried about the future, feeling isolated and alone? You might be suffering from capitalism. Symptoms include homelessness, unemployment, poverty, hunger, feelings of powerlessness, fear, listlessness, disenfranchisement, isolation, loss of identity, self-loathing, feelings of guilt, loss of free speech, incarceration, fines, suicidal thoughts, death, or revolution. Now, that's kind of the funny one, but the serious thing is that capitalism, unregulated capitalism, unrestrained, laissez-faire, neoliberal capitalism, no income tax capitalism, no regulation capitalism, does produce this kind of a crisis. And we need to acknowledge that. We need to, and thank goodness we are moving in the right direction, I think, back toward regulated capitalism like Franklin Roosevelt gave us, rather than the unregulated neoliberal capitalism of the Trump years. I got a video about this over at ThomHartmann.com. You can check it out. Tag you're it. And welcome back. Picking up your calls. Karen in Chicago. Hey, Karen, what's on your mind today?
Hey, good afternoon, Tom. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I just wanted to respond to the caller several calls back that kind of casually threw out this duplicitous Democrats and reference to Arnie Duncan and President Obama with the charter schools. Mm-hmm. I just don't think it does us any good to bring up things that, and you very helpfully pointed out that Democrats are waking up to a lot of the old policies and how maybe they were not such great policies. But look, right now we have women in red states that have already lost their reproductive rights. And if we do not come together and vote for Democrats up and down the ballot, the Republicans have already said they are going to do a national ban on abortions. So we cannot take anything to chance. We cannot use these divisive terms in regarding the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is the only thing standing in the way of us and a one-party, right-wing, fascist government. And don't think for a minute. A few of them have already talked about taking away women's right to vote.
I agree.
So I don't
including one of the billionaires who's funding them. I'm with you, Karen. I mean, it was a Republican caller who was saying, well, if you're all, upset about the privatization of public schools, you had the Obama administration actually pushing that, which was true. And, basically, as far as I can tell, the Democratic Party is no longer singing from that hymnal, as I pointed out. Mm-hmm. And, we have to acknowledge the mistakes we've made in the past. Every party makes mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. I've sure made, my share of them. But that doesn't mean that we indict the Democratic Party, and that doesn't mean that both sides are the same or any of that other kind of BS that the Republicans are constantly trying to shovel at us. And I get your sense of urgency, and I completely agree with it. But
absolutely, and the media needs to get on board with it as well and stop, giving these guys a pass. And I don't think you're a conspiracy theorist when you talk about how the Republicans love the poorly educated. That's been their game plan all along, is defunding education. So it's on point. Thank you very much for saying that.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Great talking with you.
Have a great day.
You too. Stevie in Greensboro, North Carolina. Hey, Stevie, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I know I talked to you earlier about stripping citizenship away, but we're going to have to really look at that some more because
stripping citizenship away from who?
From the people that are actively working against our democracy and who are affecting our democracy from the outside in and the inside out. These people, they're constantly doing the money that they're utilizing, all of this to destroy. We're a democracy. It has to be put in that we don't want any other form of government but a democracy.
I think,
and I think they need to look at it.
Yeah, to your point, Stevie, I think that we have a number of people who have been charged with seditious conspiracy. These Proud Boy Oath Keeper types who are, the Oath Keepers are, in the middle of a trial right now. It started yesterday, where this stuff is coming out. If you are convicted of seditious conspiracy, you lose your right to participate in electoral politics. You can't run for office any longer. In some states, you'll lose your vote. That's a sort of loss of citizenship. Actually stripping citizenship from people is a very, very rare thing and typically only happens in cases of just naked treason. But I understand your sentiment and I don't disagree with it. I think, it's something that we really need to be talking about. Thank you for the call. Anthony in Port Orchard, Washington. Hey, Anthony, what's on your mind today?
Oh, hey, Tom. Yeah, I'm wondering, I saw the news today that some of these red states are suing Biden over student loan forgiveness.
Yeah.
I didn't see any of these red states suing over the COVID loan forgiveness. And, it's the same way you see these Republicans in Congress screaming and hollering about $10,000 reduction on student loan when they took out hundreds of thousands of dollars and got those forgiven.
Oh, some of the members of Congress had millions in PPP loans that were forgiven.
Yeah, and how can the Democrats let these people get away with it? The narrative, I still haven't figured out how the Democrats can be losing races to the party that's now the traitors.
Well, you have a problem with our media. You have these right-wing media bubbles. People live in the Fox and right-wing hate radio media bubble.
Yeah, and I think Democrats got to do something about that.
And social media, by the way, fine-tunes their algorithms to keep people in their bubbles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, you have Tucker Carlson on the other night. I didn't watch it. I saw in the news that he pretty much committed treason, blamed Biden for the pipeline, then told Russia how to attack us.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it treason, but he was promoting, as Tucker Carlson frequently does, Russian propaganda. Tucker Carlson did his show from Hungary, from Budapest with Viktor Orban on it. Viktor Orban is a dictator. He doesn't believe in democracy. He's a racist, a misogynist. He's, anyway, enough of the rant. Anthony, I'm sorry we're out of time, but spot on. Thank you so much for the call. Tomorrow, Anything Goes Friday, the second hour of our program. Tomorrow, Congressman Ro Khanna. No? Third hour. Oh, even better. The third hour of our program. Tomorrow, Congressman Ro Khanna will be with us for the full hour, taking your calls in a progressive town hall meeting. And the first 2 hours of tomorrow, Anything Goes Friday. Your calls on whatever is on your mind. So thanks so much for being with us. Get out there, get active. This is one of the most important elections in our lifetimes. I know we've been saying that for a long time. This is it. So tag you're it. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertised. Find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.